tourism on this very cold day. I just want to check before we proceed with our procedural officer and the IT officer assigned to us whether we are recording and live on YouTube yet.
Good morning. Morning, Chair. We are recording.
Perfect. And we're online.
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Colleagues, with that, today we are dealing with the response by the Unemployment Insurance Fund to the submissions made by the public on the COVID-19 Temporary Employee Relief Scheme funding process. Colleagues, the reason that we are here today is in our particular province, we have received numerous complaints, whether as public representatives in general or as constituency heads regarding the payment processes of the UIF. We then had a briefing of the UIF, where the UIF gave us a general briefing on the impact in the Western Cape and the matters received by them and solved. Since then, we've embarked upon a public engagement asking for written submissions. To date, we have not received any request for oral submissions. Upon the deadline of the written submissions received from the public, in total 123 complaints, we forwarded those directly to the UIF for processing. And today the UIF is here with us in order to respond to assisting those complainants with their queries. And we have specifically asked that due to wanting to avoid showing personal information on an online screen. Under normal circumstances, we may have been in a committee room with the documents in front of us, so it would not have been online on a screen. But due to the fact that we're online, we have requested that the personal information of the complainants be removed. So for example, where ordinarily you may have seen the word Deirdre Bartman, you may see complainant 1 or employer 1 in the respective documentation, and the documentation has been sent to members. I'm going to ask that members just please introduce themselves, and then I'm going to ask that the UIF delegation just please introduce themselves, and then we can jump straight into receiving the feedback on the queries dealt with. I just want to note that I've received one apology from member Makamba Bocha. And for the rest of the meeting, I'm just going to keep my video off. As in the past week, I've experienced quite a number of technical difficulties. Thank you so much. Members, you may now introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Matlodi Maseko, member of the Standing Committee.
Thank you.
Andrikus van der Westhuizen, member of the committee.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else online, so I will now hand over to the UIF. Is Advocate Ayawa online?
Good morning, Chair and the honorable members. Yes, I'm online.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to say congratulations. I know you are now the acting commissioner, but I'm not sure if I should be saying congratulations or condolences because you guys seem to be going through acting commissioners quite frequently. But please continue with introducing your delegation to us if possible. And perhaps if you can just put your video on for a few seconds just so we can see what you look like.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I don't know, indeed, as you say, between congratulations and condolences, but I'm sure the face has got a bit of promise that we still have a bit of life. Thank you very much, Chairperson and members. I've got my colleague, Alan Ragavalo. We had asked our colleagues in the Western Cape, because in the way I read the documentation that was exchanged, centrally these matters are under the purview of our provincial dispensation in the Western Cape, but I didn't notice them yet here. But if they are, quickly introduce themselves. We'll ask the Chief Director, Provincial Operations, who's the overall head of the Western Cape, Mr. Mawele Ndamo, and he was to come with some delegation who are working on these matters. And the Alan Ragavalo, in the meeting, you'll do the presentation, Chair, with your permission. and he is coming from our own UIF section here on provincial support. We work on supporting the provinces in the discharge of these very important items. Alan, do the other colleagues join so that, as the chair says, we introduce ourselves? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Alan Raguvelu. I'm stationed in the Unemployment Insurance Fund in Pretoria, ABSA Towers. As indicated by the acting commissioner, my portfolio is provincial support. So I do give support to the provinces in the execution of the unemployment insurance benefits. And also I give support in terms of the COVID-19 TAS claims. I will now pass over to the CDPO of Western Cape. He's in the meeting. I just spoke to him before we joined in. CDPO, I'll pass over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raka. Good morning to the Honorable Chair and to the Honorable Members. And my name is Mawelen Tamo, as introduced. I'm the Provincial Head of the Department of Employment and Labour. We saw it fit that we be part of this because generally the queries are coming from the province, and hence we are part of this sitting. With me, I've also asked the Director, Unemployment Insurance Fund in the province to be part of this session. And I've also invited Mr. David Iso, who's the Provincial Chief Inspector, to also be part, just to get a view of the issues that are going to be tabled today. I've asked them to connect. Perhaps let me just hand over to them to say something. Ms. Spokas Kasana, you can just show your face and greet the members, as well as Mr. David Iso. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Spokas Kasana. I'm the Director UIF Operations for the Western Cape, and we will be talking to the issues that have been raised today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yao. I'm not sure if that was the full delegation. If so, and no one else needs to introduce themselves, then we can jump straight into the documentation.
Chairperson, kindly accept that that is our delegation so that we don't lose your time. And Alan can quickly, as you're starting, start to do as you ask us to do, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm assuming, okay, Mr. Ragavelu has the presentation online. Perfect. Thank you so much. You may go ahead.
Please unmute Alan and go ahead.
I'm sorry about that. I'm unmuted now.
No problem, Mr. Ragavelu. You may go ahead. We may ask you, because it's quite a number of claimants, so as you go on, we may just ask you just to confirm whether particular cases are now closed and or whether there are still matters that need to be completed on those particular cases. But you may go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I indicated, the full documents were circulated and members do have the full set of the documentation. So in terms of the presentation, I will concentrate only on the UI comments to indicate the progress or status of the case, of each individual case, and also in certain cases, I will highlight what further action will be done either by the Unemployment Insurance Fund in Pretoria or the Western Cape Department of Employment and Labour. If you look at the case number 1, the employment history was updated, the claim assessed and approved, payment captured with the next signed date of 28 August 2021, the client has been informed. In terms of the client being informed, that exercise was performed by the Western Province Department of Employment and Labour. They contacted all clients, that is both the TAS and the non-TAS. In terms of the second case, the claim has also been approved and payment captured with the next signed date of 7th of August, and the client has been informed. And I think in terms of the 7th of August, the client should have received payment by now. as I said, we are past the 7th of August. We're now entering into the 11th of August. In terms of case number 3, the client was called on the 26th and 28th of July without success. There is an open period which requires a UI-19 and a new termination date, and the client submitted the wrong application form 2.1 instead of a 2.3. Now, as I said, this is still open. There are further attempts being made by the Western Province Employment Office trying to get all the client. And as I said, if we get the UI-19, as I said, is the declaration history, and the form 2.1 and 2.3 are the application form in terms of the normal unemployment benefits, and it's a wrong form instead of the normal unemployment benefit form was given in. In terms of case number 4, in terms of the client was contacted on the 27th of July, and the process of claiming for UIF was explained. The client last employment was in 2013 and unfortunately does not qualify to apply for UI benefit due to time elapse. Now, in terms of the qualifying period, in terms of the Unemployment Insurance Act as amended 2016-2017, an employee or a individual that services were terminated as 12 months to apply for unemployment insurance benefits. That is the time period in terms of as stated in the amended act. I'm going over to case number 5. Just give me a second. It's not moving. It's not moving to the next slide. Okay, in case number 5, I've got it over. The last payment was captured on 27 July 2021 for a period of 29 April to 11th of July. The claim has been paid in full and marked finalized. If you mark finalized, that means there's no further payments owing to the applicant. It could be one of two, is either the credits are exhausted or the client has reached the 365 days entitlement. In terms of case number 6, the wrong application form was submitted, as I said, and in terms of the correct documentation has been requested from the client. And once all the requested documentation are received, the claim will be processed. And as I said, in terms of the previous case number, it will be the same for case number 6. The Provincial Office of Western Cape will make further contacts, and once contact has been successful and once a documentation has been received, then they can proceed to the next stage, and the next stage meaning assessing of the claims and informing the clients whether it's approved or rejected, and if approved, payment will be executed. In terms of the 7, the applicant's claim was paid in full for period 1st August to 1st October. On the 28th of May 2020, the claim is now being marked final. And I think that was communicated to the client. In terms of 8, sorry, the employment history was not updated and the new UI-19 has since been captured. Unfortunately, having been accessed and reassessed, the claim has been rejected to non-availability of credits. The UI-19, as I explained, is in terms of the employment history that is given by the employer, either digitally or in terms of manually. And the UI-19 is what we call, or what we classified as a manual declarations. And availability of credits is a rule within the Unemployment Insurance Act that for every 4 days you get 1 day's credits. And once you exhausted your credits, then unfortunately, there cannot be any further payments. Those are the rules attached, or the qualifying conditions attached to payment of unemployment insurance benefits. 9 payments have been captured on the 8th of July 21 for period 21st May to 2nd of July. The claim has been paid in full and no further payments are due to the client. 10, the employment history is not updated. UI-19 submitted. The employee services are unable to capture range declaration. A call was logged on 30 June at the Cape Town office. Follow-up with head office on the claim status has been done. Once feedback is received, we will contact clients. In terms of logging calls, it's a process that if the system does not have a functionality to perform certain action, then it's done in the back end. And when that is done in the back end, a call is logged through our case management process. We do have a dedicated case management process for calls that is attached to unemployment insurance benefits. And then once that is rectified, then that will be sorted out. So you can take as 10 is work in progress, and the Cape Town office will inform the client in terms of ongoing status of progress and what further will be done in terms of bringing case number 10 to closure. 11, payment was done on 19th of June to 26 July 21, captured on 27 July with the next signed date of 26 August. 12, same issue, payment has been done 22nd June to 27 July 21 and captured on the 28th of July with the next signed date of 27th August. So these are payments that will be received by the clients and that will also be confirmed by the Cape Town office. And then the matter is closed in terms of client confirming that monies has been successfully deposited into the bank account. It is only successful once it goes into the bank account of the client, because you can have issues between the transfer of money from the UIF to the client's bank account. Example being the account is closed or the account is inactive. In case number 13, the employment history has been updated. The client has been informed and be finalized by the next week, 5th of August. 5th of August has been passed, so I'm sure that case has been finalized. The client is satisfied with the feedback given. As I indicated at the beginning of the presentation, the Cape Town office undertook an exercise to contact all clients, be it the TERS or be it the non-TERS. In majority of the cases, they were successful in contacting the clients, but in set number of the cases, they were unsuccessful. And as I come to each case, I will indicate to you where they have been unsuccessful in contacting the client. In case number 14, the claim has been approved and a once-off payment captured on 30 July for period 1st of May to 7th of July 21. The claim has been paid in full and marked finalized. 15, the client was paid from 9th of January 26 May to 26 May 21 and has resumed work on 21st April. Therefore, the client does not qualify for any further payment. In terms of 16, the applicant, the payment has been captured on the 12th of July for period of 12th of June to 9th of July 21, and the next signed date is 9th of August. That is passed. So I will assume, as I said, it's not been confirmed, that transaction in terms of payment into the bank account of the client has been successful. Once-off payment, 17, once-off payment captured on the 14th of July for period 28 May to 4th of July, and the claim was marked finalized as the benefits were paid in full. No further payments are due to the client. And as I said, once again, I'll repeat, the Cape Town office has contacted the clients. 18th, the once-off payment captured on 13 July for period of 1st of April to 7th of May, and the claim is marked finalized as the benefits are paid in full. No further payments are due to claim, and that is very similar to number 17. Number 19 is a similar issue. Once-off payment captured on the 18th of May for period 16th August to 8th of April 2021, and the claim has been marked finalized and the benefits are paid in full. As I said, benefits are paid in full on two levels. One, they could have reached 365, or whatever credits is due to the clients less than 365 was paid in full. 20, once-off payment is very similar to the previous one. I wouldn't repeat that. As I said, the comments were given to all members, so all members have full view in terms of the status. 21, same story, payment done and the client has resumed work. 22, a continuation of payment has been captured for period 22nd June to 14th July with the next signed date of 14th of August 21. Now, progress in terms of non-TERS complaint received via emails. That is the next chapter. As I said, we concentrated on chapter by chapter or in terms of segmenting it into the different areas as given or as received. 23, the continuation of payments has been captured December to March 21. It's a once-off payment, paid in full and marked finalized. 24, the client alleges that the application was submitted in the Western Cape Labour Centre. A request to retrieve the file from the Labour Centre has been forwarded. The application has not been loaded on VO. So this is another case where a follow-up has to be done by the Western Cape office in terms of bringing this matter to the closure. And as in terms of way forward, I think as soon as the Office of Western Cape has updated the ones that in terms of work in progress, then we will give the chairperson or the honorable chairperson a progress report on cases that is not yet closed from our side as yet. 25, we requested a UI-19 and I indicated UI-19 is employment history. The employment history has been updated and the payment was captured on 29 July for period 16 January to 30 July 21. 26, the claim has been approved and payment has been captured. It's a once-off payment and claim has been marked finalized. 28, the claim has been approved and payment captured on 29 July for period 1st January to 31st March. Further payments will be processed by finance. The reason for further payments is, in some cases, is a once-off payment because the period has elapsed, but further payments is due to that we do not pay in advance. We always pay in arrears. And the reason for arrears payments that we get a declarations from the client indicating that they're still unemployed and did not start work. If we make a payment in advance, the possibility that the person has started work or could start work and therefore it will result in an overpayment. So therefore, in terms of the precautionary measure and ensure that we pay to 1 day before start work or the entitlement of the client, we do not pay in advance. So therefore, that statement, further payments will be processed, that you're looking at further continuation form by the client to declare he's unemployed, he's still unemployed, he did not receive any remuneration, and he did not start work. And that is compulsory or mandatory declarations that is needed from the client. 29, the continuation of payments has been captured. Next sign date of 22nd August. 30, the employment history has been updated. Application has been approved and payments captured with the next sign date of 31st August. And as you see, 98% of the applications are successfully closed and 98% of the application that are indicated as payment has been done. It's just 1 or 2 that are commented on, that's further work has been done because we need further information from the client. And so to date, and that hasn't been successfully received. 31, payment has been captured. Next sign date of 23rd August. 22, the applicant has been asked to resubmit the application. The first application was completed incorrectly. The applicant was informed through mail of 27 July 21. In terms of 34, this matter has been dealt by the Employer Audit Services, so it's a work in progress. Certain informations need as to be rectified before we can proceed, and this matter is on the work task of the Western Cape office, and as I indicated in earlier case numbers, further progress will be given in a week or as soon as possible as determined in terms of resolutions, in terms of outstanding cases to be closed. 35, endless claims to continue, and the last payment has been captured on 27 July for period 25 to 23rd, and the claim has been paid in full and marked finalized. It's another case has been totally closed. 36 is a similar issue, paid and in full and finalized. 37, similar issue. I'm not going to go into details. As I said, the members do have the full set of the case numbers and the comments by UI together with history. 38, the client has been requested to submit, to furnish with retirement policy through email. Document has been received and sent to SSR to process the claim. So it's a work in progress. It could not be finalized at the time of submission because there's further documentation needed. And as I said, if it's a requirement, then it's within the rights of the assessor to request this information in terms of audit compliance and compliance to our process and procedure, including the Act. So now that we receive that information, I think we will go to the next stage of assessment, and if approved, we can go to the next stage of payment. 39, resigned due to termination reason. So as I said, the person do not qualify for benefits for number 39, resignation. Is self-inflicted, and in terms of self-infliction, it is not covered by the Unemployment Insurance Act. 40, the claim has been approved and payment captured. As I said, that is one of the cases has been closed. Next pay, the next sign date of 28th August. Progress on non-TERS complaint received online survey. This is another segment. As I said, we divided into the various segment as was received. So it'd be easier in terms of tracking it and also giving feedback from our side and also the side of the standing committee. 41, the last payment has been captured on 21st July. The claim has been paid in full and marked finalized. 42, a call has been logged, and I explained the call logging process, and that will be on the work task to be finalized in terms of the Western Cape office. As I said, is a 7-day turnaround period, and client has been will be informed in terms of the payment. As 43. There is no record of application on CIO VO. The last working day was 4th of January 2015. There's no contact number for the client. So even though we might be successful in contacting the client, looking at the dates, January 2015, the client do not qualify for any benefits from the UI because, as I indicated, in terms of the qualifying period, you got to lodge an application within 12 months from date of termination. 44. The claim has been approved, payments have captured, and it was approved today meaning 30 July 2021. So that's a date in terms of when these cases was being worked with and documented for presentation today. 45, claim has been approved, and the period is 17 March 27 July. 46, claim has been approved. 47, claim has been approved. 48, the employment history has been updated, and updated UR19 has been requested from the client. And once we get the updated UR19, once again, UR19 is the employment history to be given by the employer, then we can review number 48 as well and take it to the various stages before payments. 49, as the claim has been rejected, do not provide a copy of ID when applying. The client was contracted on number provided, numerous occasion, but without success. As I said, the copy of the ID is just in terms of processes to ensure that the person applying has a valid ID number in terms of processing and recording purposes, because there are various platforms which applications are taken, not only at Provincial Office, Labour Centre online, but you do have visiting points, and some of the visiting points we do not have an online process. So where we do not have an online process is as a safety, we take in a copy of the UI19, and when we come back, we validate it. But where we have the online processes, there is no need of a copy of the ID. We've got to take into account in the geographical nature of the country that we are servicing, and in certain remote areas, there is no online services. So therefore, we take in manual documentation. But as soon as a client is contacted, that will be corrected and rectified and take it to the next stage. In terms of 50, there's no application in the system. Employment history has not been updated. The requested have been sent. An email has been sent through to assist with this application. So it's another case in terms of work in progress. 51, claim processed and approved. That's fine. 52, payment has been reversed to failed bank verification. Now that's what I was trying to indicate earlier along. Even if a payment is approved and finalized and payments made, this is only in terms of closed when the money goes successfully into the bank account. Yeah, payment was done, but due to the bank account being invalid in terms of banking details, therefore it was reversed, and the process to unreverse it or repay or reissue, as we call it, is through the prescribed form 49 and 2.8. And once that is received, then we can process in terms of reissuing it to the rightful account of the person. And if there's no issues with that bank account, they need to be successfully received into. 53, no application on the system, and we were unable to contact the client as there's no contact details provided. 54, the last payment was captured. The claim has been paid in full and marked finalized. And 55, the last payment was captured on 14 July. The claim is paid in full and marked finalized. That comes to the end in terms of the non-tiers. And as you see, as I indicated, 98% of it is successfully closed, approved and paid. Is there's an handful of it that further work has been done by the Western Cape office. And once that information is received and further attempts to contact the client has been successful, then we can close that process. And as I said, that is normal. And whenever we received application, it doesn't mean it is finalized or assessed at the first attempt. After assessment, there could be certain information that the assessor needs, because end of the day, the assessor has been appointed in terms of the law to receive application, and if satisfied, approve the application. And if you see in terms of the comments, there are valid reasons why those applications was not timelessly finalized by the Western Cape office, because of certain outstanding information is needed. And further to that, if they contact the client and the contact is successful, then the matter can be rectified easier. But if the client do not communicate or do not attend to the query given, then there can be further delays in terms of finalizing. It's not the fault of the Western Cape office, but it's just that the information is needed either from the employer or from the client. We'll go further in terms of the COVID-19. The first part of it is in terms of the beginning of COVID-19 TAS. The employer was applying for employees through the COVID-19 process, and the UI processed these claims. Here I'm talking about the comorbidity, the age, and the isolation and quarantine cases. Later on, it was spelled out in terms of the age, the comorbidity, and the isolation quarantine. And I think you find it in terms of the direction from 16th October that was signed around about the last finalized direction. It was the 8th of April. I'm not talking about the recent one that was signed on the 15th of July, but the one prior to that. There you have a distinction between the comorbidity cases and the non-comorbidity cases. In the beginning, yes, you might have had a mixture and we processed and paid. But going forward, from the 16th of October's claim, you got to be registered with the Department of Health in terms of registering your comorbidity, age, isolation, quarantine. And that is successfully done, then you come to UI and apply for COVID-19. Now, once again, the portal is still open from the 16th of October to date meaning 25 July. So if the client feels that that period covers those comorbidities, isolation and age, then they are free to apply and we will accordingly assess and pay if meet qualifying rules. And as indicated, the client was contacted. I think it's in black in the bottom of it. Number two, the portal is still open for those clients.
Apologies for interrupting you. While the previous document only had a name of someone, this particular document has an ID number in it. And I'm going to request that you either take the ID number out or that our particular document be put up, please. Number two.
Sure, I can just give me a second.
Yes, I think you, in the submissions section, I think you included the raw information in the submission section. If we could just take that off quickly.
Okay. Okay.
Chairperson?
Yes.
With your permission, I see that not only that one, but there are some others where, as you said, let's deal with the issue, not the identities of the person.
Yes, please. If needs be.
We check for all, or we just substitute if.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair.
If needs be, we also have a document. We can put that one up with the blacked out information. Miss Adams, do we have the one where it deals with the WhatsApp messages?
Yes, Chair, we have the entire document. Lizette will flight it soon.
Yes, please, because we do not want, it's one thing to say Deirdre has asked for help, but it's another thing to put Deirdre's ID number online because we don't know what the other circumstances in their work environment is. Okay, let's just quickly go to the first and second. Okay, we've dealt with number one and number two.
Sorry, Chair, this is the sorry, Lizette, it's the wrong document. It's the other document, the TERS one. This is non-TERS.
Thank you for this. And I'm just going to ask that after the meeting, that we just also ask PMG that when they upload documentation for the public record, that they just use our document that has the blacked out information of everyone, just so that we can make sure that that people's information is private, and we can always just recheck afterwards again before submission to PMG should they require the documentation. But we've dealt with employer one, employee one, and employee two, I think.
Yes, my apologies, Chairperson. So what I'm doing from my side, I unshared and I'm reading off my screen without mentioning any ID numbers. And then the members can follow in terms of the documentation that were circulated.
No problem. You can just indicate which number you are at, and then Ms. Kluter will be able to assist us to go to that particular section. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will continue. In case number 2, right, as indicated, the portal is still open for those claims and the employer must apply. So the key thing there, Chair, in terms of the directive, it is indicated that the employer should apply on behalf of the employees. The reason for that is the employees is still attached to that employer. And in terms of looking at the volumes and looking at the numbers and looking in terms of interacting to solve any outstanding issues, it will be easier to be in terms of us contacting the employer rather than millions of employees. In terms of the number of employers that we have on the system for TAS is close to 300,000. And in terms of unique ID numbers, in terms of employees, is close to 6 million. So therefore, in terms of the directive, it is clearly stated that application must be made on behalf of the employer for his employees. However, the client was contacted and was informed on the 6th of August. In case number 3, the employer claimed COVID-19 test from 27th of March 2020 to 15 March 2021 and was paid. The reason in terms of the payment, why payment fluctuate, because we deal with individual employees. We look at individual salaries, individual lockdown period, and individual remuneration. It is not that every person from the establishment or that employer must receive the same payment. Also, in terms of salaries, we look at the declared salary. What salary was declared? We do not use per se whatever salary the employer gives, because as found during the first audit process, there were instances where employees were inflating their salary. So therefore, in terms of further enhancement to the TAS processing, we normally use declared salary on the CIR database. So there is a possibility. However, the client was contacted and he confirmed that all payments reflecting on the system were received. And I think from the notes given by the Western Cape office, there was satisfaction on behalf of the client. However, if there's not, we can still further explain or take it further. But for the information received, the client was satisfied. In terms of our records, the client was paid for this period, and the client was contacted on the 6th of August in terms of payments received. In terms number 5, yes, the payments amount fluctuated. I explained about why the payments amount fluctuates. You do not look globally and compare individual to individual or employee to employee. Is that person's record or data on our system that is attached to that employee? And also in terms of determining what value is indicated. Having said that, the applicant has been fully paid and the applicant was contacted and notified, and there was confirmation that she received 4,027, 2,057 and 2,144, and she never received other payments from the employer, and that matter has been referred to risk management. As I said, whenever we have complaints that non-receipt of payments after showing on COVID-19, then the risk management unit gets involved. In addition to that, we do have a follow the money process in terms of our contracted tender, and that is a normal process as signed off by the UI Commissioner, the DG and the Minister in terms of all COVID-19 claims will undergo an audit process. And during the audit process, if that is not rectified, and then it is handed over to the SRU or other law enforcement agencies. And normally for TAS, we worked very closely in terms of the OX, the SAP, and further to that, the SRU unit. And in case number 6, the payment for January was paid from January to 15 March. All months claimed has been paid, and the client was contacted and informed. In terms of number 7, 16th October to 31st December is not paid because the salary received is more or equal to leave income. Explanation to that, Chair, is that you only pay TAS if it is proven there is a loss of income. That means the person was receiving 1,000 rands before lockdown, and during lockdown they received 0 or less than that. Less than that, it could be partially in employment, and therefore we ask for remuneration during lockdown. And if we conclude there is no loss of income, then that claim is rejected. However, in terms of our processes, the employer still have the opportunity of rectifying any values given, and that claim can be reprocessed. As I said, yes, we do look at that could be an error in terms of a typing error or administrative error on the side of the employer. And if he feels that way, then we have what we call a discrepancy process, where recaptured values by the employer will be reprocessed, and he goes through the same process. But to date, there is no objection, so we take it in that there is no loss of income, therefore there'll be no payment. In number 8, in terms of foreign nationals, we follow the same route as South African citizens. That means we match against Home Affairs. The number must be valid in terms of the citizen database with Home Affairs, and also with SARS in terms of the person being declared through the SARS process, and also in terms of declared via the UI process. So we look for 2 positive matches. 1, the UI should have a match of that foreign nationals, and either SARS or Home Affairs should have a match of that process. If you don't have the 2 ticks, then that foreign national application is denied because we cannot validate. Now, validation and verification are important components in the task processing. As you know, after the first audit in July, August last year, there were certain discrepancies or gaps identified by the AG, and those gaps were closed successfully by UI during the month of August and September, and we recommenced payment from the 22nd of September. And one of the things that we introduced or enhanced or improved were the foreign national verifications. In terms of 9, Chair, the client does not qualify because he lost employment on 25th March. As you know, for TAS, it's not that you're unemployed. With TAS, you are employed, you're still attached to the employer, and only because of the lockdown regulations, you cannot sell your labor or you cannot utilize your labor in return for a remuneration. And this person or this individual lost his employment on 25th March 2019. Therefore, the client was contacted, and it came out that there was a UI Act claim, and an amount of 3,453.03 was processed and will reflect in the client's bank account within 5 working days. Now, as I said, when we get a task claim, we also check whether there's a UI claim. And that's what we do, and that's what we have in terms of controls. There is no double dipping. It is one of the golden rule of TAS that if you receive UI, you can't receive TAS. If you receive TAS, you cannot receive UI for the same period. In terms of number 10, in terms of number 10, yes, the TAS is in terms of compensating to compensate employees who experience a loss of income because there is unable to pay them due to the employer was paid 100% of the salary. Once again, I'm saying there is no loss of income. So in terms of our assessment and way forward, the employer was fully compensated there. In terms of 11, in terms of no task claim was registered with UI for the different ID numbers given. And if you look at ID number, the 4th ID number is an invalid ID number. And as I said, we do match against Home Affairs database, and the ID number must be a valid ID numbers for us to proceed. It's one of the rules within the TAS system. That is, if the ID number is invalid, we do not take the process any further, because you could have a situation that a number was included in TAS in terms of inverted commas, a fraudulent transaction or entry. At 12, the liquor sector was covered continuously from 27 March 2020 to 15 March 2021, and from 28 June to 25 July. The employer was to claim for TAS for lost income. As I said, once again, it's the onus of the employer to submit the TAS claim as indicated in the directive. The client was contacted and notified in terms of, yes, the portal is still open from 16th of March. Oh, from 16th of October, sorry, 16th October to date, 25th of July. And if there's a loss of income, we will still accept claims and process it, but we cannot execute a payment if there's no claim. In terms of 13, the reason for non-payment, the employer do not qualify for TAS payment, no contribution received from SARS. Now, this contributions check was a new introduction from the 16th of October's claim. That means for iteration 7.8, which was as per directive signed 8th of April and directive signed 15 July. We went to one further indication that there must be contributions, because as I said, the first part of TAS, it was without contribution checks, but the latter part of TAS from 16th October's claim, it was also subjected to contribution. So it's indicated that no contribution was received by SARS, and therefore we will refer the matter to IES, and once that is successfully concluded and there is some indication that the employer complied with the UI regulations, then we can review and reprocess. Any claim received and is not paid doesn't mean it is closed and left aside. If information has been updated either by the employer or by the department, as in the case of the IES, where we referred the case for checks and balances, if that is done and even updates given by SARS, we will always review. The only time we do not take an application from an employer, that means where we have successfully communicated a closure date. And if the employer did not meet the closure date, unfortunately, we cannot take further application. But if you submit it on time, we will continue working with those claims until we get to a point that nothing further can be done from either side, and all denials are as per the directives issued or the business rules agreed upon with social partners. As of 14, no claim for TAS. If a client lost employment in May 2019, it doesn't qualify. I explained that rule and the client was contacted. Employer must only claim for TAS funding if the employees do not work due to lockdown or had to work reduced hours and could not get paid normal wages and salary. Yeah, we contacted the client, we informed him in terms of what needs to be done, and if that is done and received, then we will proceed to the next stage of processing. And we will only pay if all our business rules are met. In terms of 16, the only application was received was 27 March to 30 June, and 3 of them have been paid. No other application was submitted. Client was contacted. In terms of 17, we tried to contact the client, failed. We sent an SMS, no response today to obtain ID number. 18, the client did not apply for TAS. And we contacted the client on the 6th of August, the 8th of August, but to no avail, so we sent in SMSs. Once again, I'm saying in terms of the directive, the employer should apply because that employee is still attached to the employer, and in terms of the application process, it is from the employer to UI, and payment can be either to the employee, employer, or bargaining council. 19, the only application we have is from 27 March to 30 April, and that has been paid, no further application, which means that either the employer has fully paid the employees, or the employer has been 100% in terms of capacity, and that is not further affected by the lockdown, and that is normal. I think the first 3 months we had severe cases in terms of lockdown, in terms of employees not be able to operate, but from July there was improvement in terms of the lockdown regulations, and most employees went back to work or full capacity. And as is, once again, we are saying TAS is there for loss of income, and there's no loss of income, there is no need for an application, and there'll be no payments from UI. However, that must be confirmed by the employer. We contacted the client, but we failed and we sent an SMS. In terms of 20, application was made from 1st of April to 22nd August, and it's been paid. The client has been contacted and informed of that process. However, it is also indicated that the phone number is incorrect. So I will withdraw the first part of it. I will say that attempt was made to contact the client, but the phone number provided is incorrect. In terms of 21.
Apologies. Mr. Ragavalu, apologies.
Yes.
You indicated that the number is incorrect, but that is the number that the person WhatsApped from. This was a WhatsApp submission.
Yes. As I indicated, contacting the clients were tasks given to the Western Cape office, and this is the feedback given. However, I'll make note of number 20, and I think the Western Cape delegation is here. They will also make note of 20, and maybe it could be an error from the official that were phoning. And then we will recheck that, recorrect that, and as I said, we will try to give feedback in those cases that we fail to make contact in the next week or so, depending on the resolutions of this meeting, Chair.
Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of 21, the client has been paid unemployment benefits in full, TAS payments paid until date of termination. The client has been contacted. In terms of 22, both periods add error messages. The clients do not qualify for TAS, no contributions received. As I said, it's a new rule placed in terms of, because we gave an opportunity for employers in the first period or the first phase, we call it the first phase of TAS, until 15th October to get the books in order and sort out everything that need to be sorted out. And thereafter, from 16th October, we went the full bouquet of rules, which included the contribution checks with SARS as well. And you also get non-SARS payments, but those are more, you're looking at your domestic sector that normally do not pay to TAS. One example. In terms of 23, the ID number provided is invalid. And I said contacts have been made. Client was contacted and notified on the 6th of August. Client only received payment for July, August, and the employer states that the monies were paid back to the fund and the matter was referred to risk. So we have to find out why the employer refunded the money. It could be that the employee was paid in full and therefore there was no reason. We did have a number of cases, and I think the follow the money audit deterred employers in terms of whatever inverted comma fraudulent transaction was entered into the TAS system. And once we started the audit process, once we communicated extensively, the repercussions that can be attached, and the SIU is working closely with us. Many employers refunded funds back to us after they received it, and the only reason we came to that conclusion that the payment were deemed to be, or the claim was deemed to be invalid or incorrect, and therefore the reason. But this matter was referred to the risk, and depending on the outcome, that matter will be taken further. 24, yes, payment for October to December has been paid on 7th July. The client has been contacted, but she only states she received payments of 1,500 in the month of July and never received other payments. Once again, that matter has been referred to risk. That couldn't be finalized at the time of finalizing the report. But as I indicated, there will be further updates by the Western Cape office, and further updates will be provided to your office depending on the resolution of this meeting. 25, payment was not made due to error message, no declarations. Yes, declarations is one of the key rule, and declaration confirms to us that employer is attached to that employee, or that employee is attached to that employer. And if we cannot prove that, then we do not pay. However, we do give opportunities for employer to correct that process on our system. And once that is corrected, we normally rerun and pay it. As I indicated, nothing will be left if received. Every claim received will be reviewed if further information is given by the employer. And that is the commitment given by the Unemployment Insurance Fund. If you update, if you correct, if you do the necessary action as indicated by yourself, and then we commit that to review those cases and pay out timely as possible, take into account where we are with the task process. 26, application was made and paid on the 7th of July. 27 is invalid ID passport. 28, application was made and paid on 7th of July. 29, payment was not made due to the error, and I explained the error part of it. And once again, clients were contacted to message. 30, application was made and paid. 31, application made and paid. 32, application made and paid. 33, application made and paid. 34, payment could not be made due to an error message. Now, let me go further with error messages. Whenever we receive claims, we normally have 3 tabs in the online portal: a payment breakdown for those paid, a pending one, and that yes, it's about to be processed, and a rejected one. And both the pending one and the rejected one give an error message, will give an idea to a client why it's not being processed. And one of the reasons here is no declarations. You could have another error message: bank details, bank verification has failed, and thereafter we assist the claim manually to try to get that rectified. So all non-payments is accompanied, we call it an error message, but it could be a rejection code, it could be a refusal code, but in terms of terminology that we use for TAS is an error message.
Mr. Rakap, apologies for
Yes.
interrupting. You indicated number 30 to 33 were paid and completed. On our documentation, it indicates it has been referred to risk management on the 10th of August, which was yesterday. So we can just go up 3. I just want to check whether your documentation and our documentation is talking to the same employees.
Okay,
Number 30, 31, 32, and 33.
30, 31, 32, 33. Okay, let me read 31. I would like to know if my company did apply for UF TAS under my name since October last year.
Okay, so that's
name
our 31.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I think maybe it's an update, right? The recent updates. Maybe I will just double check in that, but in terms of my record, that the application was made and paid. So in terms of the 31, 32, 33, we will recheck it for you. But as I said, my records are showing now the application was paid.
Thank you.
But it's not a problem, Chair. We will reconfirm that for you and send you that by email via the office of the UIC. 34, payment could not be made due to the error, and I explained the error. 35, claim will be processed, and as I said, was paid on the 7th of July, 2021. 36, payment was not made due to the error, and I explained the error part of it, Chair, so I wouldn't go that into details. 37, no ID number provided, and was sent to risk management, was not received by the client. So I think when the client was contacted, that the information received, and as I said, this will be dealt with in terms of the risk management unit. It's indicated was not received by the client, was paid into the company's bank account. 38, client was being paid from 27 March to 15th October, 16 October, 31st December. Payment was not made due to error messages. Right, in terms of the second period, the first period as indicated was paid. And client was contacted on the 8th. 39, in terms of us contacting the client directly, as I said, with foreign nationals, I explained the process. Payment from 1st of July to 31st December was not made due to non-declarations and verifications. And that process in terms of error messages, I did explain that. And the client was contacted and notified on the 8th of August. Matter referred to IES on the 10th of August. 40 is the same issue, and the matter will refer to IES on the 10th of August. That 41 is not yet paid, the claim will be recycled. It's a term that we use internally recycled. So if something is not paid and it's there for reasons, and now that reason has been corrected, rectified, then we reprocess, recycled, or resubmit, and that is normally done by the ICT unit in terms of the automated process. The client has been contacted or notified on the 6th of August. That will be followed up by the Western Cape office, and as soon as it's recycled for pay, and then you will get the update on that issue. 42, 27 March to 31st May paid, 1st of June to 16th September not paid due to error message. I explained that error message in prior case numbers, Chair. 43, cannot pick up any claim on the system, and the ID number or the reference number did submit application for other employees, but not for that particular individual. Client contacted on the 8th of August and notified, and she will communicate with the employer. Now that is normal, Chair. You might get 100 employees in establishment, but the employer will only apply for 90, because the key portion to take into account, you only make an application if an employee experiences a loss of income. If there's no loss of income, you don't make an application. So that, as I said, we inform the client, she will communicate to the employer. It could be on the error of the employer not indicating or submitting the ID number of that employee. And if you submitted a claim, the system allows you to add on. The only time the system blocks you if you never submitted a claim. If you did submit a claim, you met the closure date in terms of add-on, in terms of edit, in terms of correction, the system still allows you. So the client, being the employer stroke employee, will still have the opportunity of including that employee's identification number for the claim, provided there is no loss of income. 44, the reason for the different benefit amounts is payment fluctuate. I explained that. You do not compare yourself to any other individual. Look at your salary, your lockdown period, and your remuneration. And further to that, look at what the employer declared you. We do not take face value what the employer gave us for TAS. It is subject to verification on the CIR database, and we use declared salary on the CIR database because that is what the employer gave us normally in terms of the month-to-month basis. In terms of the law, amended law, in terms of UI Act, every employer must submit declarations before the 7th of each month. And that's what we use in terms of TAS, because it's a more realistic salary declaration rather than waking up one morning, submitting a claim and giving us amounts that seems to be inflated as compared to our CIR database. And now we go on to the emails, Chair. 45, you have to contact clients and obtain UIF reference number. The contact number does not exist. An email will forward it to the employer, and we're waiting for the response to the email. And once we get the response to the email, then we can take the process further, Chair. 46, both ID numbers were paid from 27 March to 15 September, and that is the only application received. The client was contacted to no avail, and an SMS was sent to the client. But we feel that matter is closed, because it was paid. The only thing that we got to find out whether the monies went in the bank account of the individual. So you could have a situation the employer received but never transferred over to the employee, and that will be followed up through further updates by the Western Cape office, depending on the resolutions in terms of dates given. 47, clients to be contacted telephonically since no UIF reference number was provided. The UIF reference number was provided. The client contacted, he gave us the ID number, and the company can't apply for TAS. Reason being, there's a company that applied for the TAS using the company's reference number, as this was referred to risk. That is also one of the issues we had, that if you work for one employer and you move to another employer, there could be an error by the first employer applying for you, because most of the applications were done to consultants or through agencies, employment agencies, those attached to companies, and there could be a lack of a quality assurance, a quality checking by these so-called consultancies, and it could be a duplication of ID numbers. The rule on TAS is we do not duplicate payments. If we paid you once, we do not duplicate. So therefore, if it's incorrect, the IES in terms of risk management unit or through the law enforcement must retrieve the money from or investigate why was a claim made by that employer, do the necessary, and then close the matter, get a refund and pass the refund over to the rightful person. Because even if you paid to the incorrect employer, it's attached to an ID number. The employer must give us proof that the money was transferred to that employee as per ID number. If not, then it's deemed to be a fraudulent transaction. 48, email was sent. There was no contact number. We're waiting a response for the email. 49, client was contacted, an email was sent, waiting response. Because as I said, there was no ID number or reference number attached to 49. 50 is a similar story in terms of no ID number or reference number of the company to look at. 51, the ID number was paid from 1st of April to 31st December, matter to be referred to risk management if money was never received by the employees. And that's what we're trying to do in terms of this case, to find out from the client whether she received what was paid. If she received, we can tick it off. It was not, then the matter will be in terms of risk management unit. 52, yes, in terms of processes from the 16th of October, you got to be registered with Department of Health. And once you register with Department of Health, then only can you submit the claims in terms of your comorbidities, your age, your isolation quarantine. It's one of the controls. Because Department of Health is a registering office for all isolation, quarantine, age, and comorbidity cases. So we are linked to Department of Health, so the two databases are in sync. And if the ID number appears in both databases, it's a tick for us in terms of we can safely pay. It's one of our controls that we put in place, and every employer are aware about the health and safety regulations. And in terms of registering with Department of Health and disclosing with the Department of Health the comorbidity cases, the isolation quarantine, and your age. And through our communication as well, we have informed the employer of the processes. So we're not saying that we do not want to pay. We're saying to employers how they meet our procedure. And if you fully comply with our procedure, then we have no obligations but to meet what your entitlement of payment. 53. As I said, no ID number was provided or reference numbers, and we're trying to contact the client to obtain that and then move to the next stage. 54, client was contracted and notified, payments was received and paid into company's bank account. No declarations were made after 19th of February 2021, and the matter was referred to IES. So certain portion it was paid and certain portion it was not paid. 55, ID number was paid from 1st of April to 31st May. Other periods there was no claims, and the client was contacted and notified in terms of the processes. 56, an email was sent to client to provide contact details. Our office is currently waiting feedback, and that is the latest information received from the Western Cape office. On receipt of the information, then the Western Cape office can do the further checks and balances and provide further feedback. 57, the payment was not made because it failed bank verification. Employer to email us bank confirmation so a manual bank verification can be done. So yes, payment is ready and waiting to be transferred. However, the employer or employee did not give us the right banking details. And that is our checks in terms of TERS, that if money is paid, it goes to a valid bank account. So if there's any fraudulent transaction, then we can track it in terms of movement from that bank account to any other bank account in terms of the law enforcement investigation process. 8, client to be contacted. Client was contacted on the 6th of August because of nature of business. Client does not qualify for TERS for the period the company falls under agriculture. The employer further states they are in the supply to tourism sector. Yes, in terms of the directive that was signed on the 8th of April and 15th July, it is sector-based. That means it's not open carte blanche for all employers. It is attached to the COCTA regulations that further stated certain employers with further regulations were placed. and those companies was given the benefit of applying for further TERS extension. For example, the hospitalities and the liquor and the so-called tourism. Now, agriculture doesn't fall per se into those three sectors. However, if the employer can prove that it's a value chain to either the tourism or hospitality or liquor, and I think in this case it'd be more the liquor part of it, then only we can accept it. We're not saying it doesn't qualify. We are saying is the employer must substantiate his involvement in those three sectors, because only the three sectors was approved in terms of the minister's regulations or directions or directive that is in line with the COPTA directive in terms of further regulation placed on certain sectors which was not on the other sectors. An example is the liquor and the tourism part of it. And also I mentioned the hospitalities. 59, no contact details provided to contact the client. 60, email was sent to
Mr. Ragavulu. 59 does have contact details. The procedural officer just messaged me and she will also forward that information to you for 59.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. And that is not a problem going forward, Chair. As I said, the Western Cape office is in full command of this process and they will do the necessary going forward and also provide us in terms of UIF with feedback and your office with feedback, Chair. Thank you very much. 60 period 16th October to 15 March is sector based. This employer must qualify by the zip codes. And the employer feels that you were denied through our processes, you can lodge an appeal, and appeals are attended to and given access to our system. Because Chair, in terms of the direction that qualify from 16th October to 25 July 2021, as signed off by the Minister of Employment and Labour, it is sector-based and not carte blanche across all sectors. An email was sent to client. Client was notified and also requested to provide contact details. Client responded back in terms of phone number and all necessary was explained. So if it's sector-based, the employer will still have opportunity to apply because, Chair, the decision of the UI is that those portals are still open for any application from 16 October 2020 to 25th July 2021. No decision as yet has been taken to close the portal, so they are still open. It's yet phase 1 from 27 March to 15th October is now closed. 61, employer was supposed to claim for TERS for employees affected by lockdown. Most periods were closed after summer dispute. However, yeah, in terms of disputes, Chair, if the employer has a valid reason, we can look at it. I'm not saying it to be considered, but if there was negligence of the employer, then the employer must take onus for his own action, because end of the day, we apply the TERS process to set rules, and the set rules is we had a closure dates, and that was communicated to all employers. And not only that, Chairperson, our process also through our governance in terms of NEDLAC process, and the social partners are part of our process, and all decision that we invoke going forward is endorsed in terms of the social partners, and the social partners is also endorse that application from 27 March to 15 October 2020 is closed, and that was communicated also through their platforms to employers, and not only on our platforms in terms of our communication direction or directives. I'll go on to the online survey. Right, 62 ID number so-and-so was paid 2 periods until 15 March. The 15 March one is still to be paid. The client was contacted and notified. 63, 16th October to 31st December 2020, not paid as yet. No contact details given to contact the clients. And as I said, we will contact the clients and indicate in terms of the error message. And if the error message is corrected by the client, then we move forward with the processing. If the error message is not corrected, then from our side, we take it that it has been accepted by the employer / employee, and our assessment is correct with no further review necessary. 64, matter to be referred to risk management for investigation because the money was paid directly into employer's bank account. Yes, in terms of TAS, in terms of the process, there is a MOA that is signed by every employer and the MOA is binding. Therefore, the SIU is involved in terms of taking certain employers to court or to task because the employer, through the MOA, has committed that within 5 days will give us a reconciliation, and within 2 days of receipt, the monies will go into the bank account of the employees. That is through the negotiation process that took place during the NEDLAC process, and the representatives of employer and employee organization together with community-based organization agreed to the MOA and agreed to the terms and conditions that we set out there, and therefore it's the onus of employees to pay the monies received within 2 working days. However, having said that, we do have cases where there are employers that do not take into the conditions or the state of being of employees, and there are delays from the side of employees, and that's where the law enforcement unit comes in. But this matter will be further checked in by the risk management unit. 65, no contact details provided to contact the client. 66, client to provide the contact details because none was provided there. 67, client was paid from 27 March to 15 October, 16 October to 15 March, not paid with error message. I cover the error message client, Chair. Client was contacted and I think a SMS was sent to the client and the matter referred to IES. 16 October, 68, 16 October to 15 March, not paid with error message. I covered that. 70, client to provide UIF reference number to check, and no contact details provided to contact the client. Chair, that's in terms of what I have covered in terms of 74 slides. But as I said, I will wait for your minutes, and if any action by us, they may follow it up. But from the UIC's office, the Acting Commissioner's office, this exercise is fully under the control of the Western Cape Employment and Labour, and they will ensure that matters not dealt with 100% are followed up, and depending on the resolution and through the office of the UIC, they will give further feedback. Chair, I will stop there and I'll pass over to you, or before I pass, I will pass over to the Acting Commissioner if there's anything further he wants to add on. Commissioner?
Advocate Tawa. Advocate, are you still online with us? Okay, I'm not sure if the advocate is still online with us. I'm just going to suggest quickly that we take a 5-minute comfort break, and then I'm going to open up for questions and answers. Thank you so much. I do have some procedural questions, but I will open up the question session first for members, whether it's procedural or substantive questions, within 5 minutes time at 9:23. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We are resuming the meeting. I just wanted to check, Advocate Yawa, are you online with us? I see him on the participant list. Advocate Yawa, are you able to hear us? Okay, I'm assuming then that Advocate is just having some technical difficulties. Colleagues, I'm now going to open up for questions on the respective submissions. Just thank you to the UIF for doing that presentation and being able to deal with the queries that we've been able to receive. But colleagues, question time is now open. If there are no questions, I can go. Okay, I see Member van der Westhuizen. Member Nkondlo. Okay, I will then go after Member Nkondlo. Thank you so much, in that order.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I would like to start by saying first, thank you very much to everybody that assisted us in bringing us to this point, be it our admin support staff, but particularly also the staff from the Unemployment Insurance Fund. It is clear that, you know, they really attended to these individual cases with great vigor, and I really want to appreciate what they've done and the willingness to come and report back on each and every problematic case that was raised with them. Chair, and therefore my questions are not going to be regarding specific cases, although I have noted or dotted down a number of them. The first question to Mr. Rabagalu is, it seems to me as if some of the cases experienced delays that were out of line with the general flow of cases, or how cases were managed. And in a number of these cases, you know, obviously one can understand when there've been incorrect documentation, or whether documentation was outstanding, etc. But it seems to me as if there've been a number of cases where no documentation was really outstanding, ignore the word really, and yet they experienced some delays which was not explained in terms of the presentation this morning. And my first question is, do we have an idea of why it is that sometimes, you know, similar cases experienced different turnaround times? And secondly, is there a system within the Unemployment Insurance Fund whereby they are able to track cases that seem to get stuck in the system, to give those cases perhaps, you know, a second look, or you know, a division that will try and resolve such cases, so that, you know, some cases are not just, you know, left in a pile and are you know, being delayed more and more and more. That is my first question. The second one is, Chair, we've seen a number of cases where people have completed the incorrect documentation, which then obviously also led to problems, delays, etc. And my question is, you know, has the fund also identified this as a potential challenge? And to what extent can that problem be avoided? Can it be avoided by, you know, enlarging the heading on top of the form, or describing, you know, that a form with, let's say, a UI 19 or whatever, that people get a clear indication when they, you know, which of the forms they need to complete in order to apply for certain benefits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Nkondlo.
Morning, Chair, morning members and the colleagues from the department that have joined us in UIF. Let me join our honourable member, Honourable van der Westhuizen. I think in appreciating the detailed work that has been done in following up on these individual cases, whilst one sees that there are others that are still pending, either based on the contact details that, as I think the presenter was sharing, are still being followed up, and matters that maybe because of substantive reasons are still being processed. I think, Chair, whilst I appreciate the individualized reporting, one also would have thought that out of all of this would be able to pick up what exactly are some of the trends and issues that are coming out of these individual responses. As an example, from the employee side, one sees that at most there is a lot of information gap. There is a lot of lack of awareness of the process of the tiers versus the UIF. And now one wonders whether the Department of Labour, the UIF, is sort of appreciating from these individual cases, and I'm sure many others, as it was said that more than 300,000 applicants have been there. Are they appreciating this? And what is it that they are doing to help ordinary workers, employees who at a time of COVID are having to be sent from pillar to post because of lack of information about process? And secondly, how does the Department of Labour centers assist in this regard? Because I see at times you even have one employee as reference here who actually was not had to be assisted or referred to the Department of Labour Center because she was afraid of approaching the employer because she was told that she would be fired. You know, these are some of the employee rights or labor issues that one is asking, where is the responsibility lies to ensure that there is proper labor relations in the environment of work, wherein between the company and the employees, there is an equal or equitable understanding of what are the rights and obligations of either the employee and the employer. So this is one area that I'm picking up from this information, and I'm interested to know that in all the improvements that are being done in the Department of Labour and with the UIF, is this being picked up, and what is being done to try and close the gap? Because indeed, if one looks at all these cases and the additional work through this committee that had to be done, one sees the glaring challenge of information and proper understanding of processes, and one wonders the additional resources, both human and financial wise, that needs now to be added to the workflow process of these claims to try and correct things that, if information was there properly, would have been sort of avoided. So, Chair, I think that is one issue that for me, I have a challenge, or I would want actually the Department of Labour and the UIF to sort of respond to. And also, Chair, in these cases that are referred to the risk unit, I think I picked up from the presentation that there are some of those cases, but also the presenter indicates that there is already matters wherein employers where they didn't give the money to the employees, so those employers had to do refunds and all of that. And I also want to understand, why is that the case? Is it because the system currently is actually saying the money goes to the employer
from the Department of Labor, from the UIF actually, to the employer, and then through to the employee, which is the beneficiary. Is the problem or the fault line just there? And again, is it because there isn't a system that actually verifies after payments have been done to the employers, that employers must provide the UIF, assuming as the UIF is the custodian of making the payments. So once you have paid on behalf of the UIF to the employer, so that they are able to pay employee B, isn't there a system that requires the employers to then come back to the UIF to confirm that the monies as paid out have actually been deposited and confirmed that they have been paid? Is it because there isn't that particular system? Or what happens when you find some employers at this point had a situation where they sat with the money, they've used the money for other things, and they had, through these individual inquiries, they had then to refund such monies or pay back those monies back either to the UIF or to the employers. So I'm just trying to understand the system and the limitations of the system. And I would hope that in those areas, if that was things that were picked up, whether they were, and if there are any improvements, and if so, what type of improvements have been placed to try and correct and avert this kind of situation. I'll stop there for now, Chair. Thank you very much.
You know, one of the reasons why I absolutely love this committee is that the members of this committee are always fighting for the people in their constituencies and the people of the Western Cape. And they have been absolutely 100% correct about the problems that we've been experiencing on the ground. Mr. Ragavalu, I'm just going to add some of my questions. I'm going to make some suggestions as well. In the documentation, much of the responses, you will see it says contacted on the 6th of August. And the reason I mention that date is 6th of August was 4 working days ago, last week, Friday. We sent, and the procedural officer needs to correct me here now if I'm wrong, but we sent the respective information to the UIF after the deadline on the 12th or the 13th of July. Ms. Adams, which day was it? I know it was there somewhere mid-July.
Yeah, sorry, I just need to double check, but it could have been about the 14th.
Okay, so mid-July. Mid-July, we sent the information to the UIF. Okay, let me open my calendar. If we sent the information that week, then it's almost exactly 1 month ago that we submitted the information on these people to the UIF. But many of the people were contacted with information on the 6th or the 7th of August, which is essentially the end of last week, and even on Saturday, for example. So now my question is, why did the UIF wait 3 weeks in order to contact people regarding incorrect information, incorrect details? I mean, these are not just the fact that they've waited 3 weeks since they've made their submission to the committee in order to receive an answer on a particular matter. These people, many of them, have also already experienced delays in their respective applications. And with all due respect, Mr. Ragavalu and Advocate Yawa, if you are still online, but many of these people's queries, if not all, have been solved because this committee asked you to provide a report on each and every single person's query. And because we're here today and you briefing us on the feedback on each and every person's queries, it was thus important for those queries to be completed. So that's the first. I need, please, you need to assist me with why it took so long. And secondly, the member van der Westhuizen is absolutely correct. It doesn't explain some of the delays that have previously been encountered by these people. So if we can just get some feedback on the delays on some of these cases. Ms. Adams, I'm just going to quickly mute you.
Oh.
Okay, there we go. No problem. Further, many you are saying many of you can't get a hold of these people, but some of these people are also indicating in their submissions that they continuously contact the UIF. In the submissions, submission after submission, you see sentences saying, I keep phoning the UIF, they're not answering. I email the UIF, they're not answering. And you know, if it was one email or if it was one submission that said that, I might have thought, okay, perhaps the UIF weren't able to get to that person. But when it comes up again and again and again, it speaks to a systemic problem. And that systemic problem needs to be fixed. And simply saying that one has a backlog isn't a good enough excuse anymore, unfortunately. Next up, you indicated that 98% of the submissions we've sent to you have been completed. I quickly calculated out of 123 submissions, 98% is 120.54. And if you round it up, it's 121. Now, there's definitely more than 2 cases that have not been completed and that are still in the work in progress. So if you can just please indicate to us how many out of the submissions you've received still need to be completed, because then the committee can take that number, divide it by 123, and then also calculate for ourselves the particular percentage. And one recommendation, Member Kondo is 100% correct. What is the system requiring employers to confirm? You only indicated about the 5 days of payout and then the receipt and so on. But surely if I pay Member Kondo, for example, money, or if Member Kondo pays me money, she's going to be able to give you a proof of receipt. Or is there not a way for the UIF to have a template for an employer to give the employee to sign to show that they've received the money, and that way they can submit that signed documentation to you if they, for example, don't have a particular bank account? Surely there must be a better method of proving whether or not someone has been paid. And because of some of this lack of information to people, and not just only the lack of information, but the delays in communicating with people, whether they have errors or incorrect documentation or no verification or no declarations, it is also creating frustration between employers and employees. And that is frustration that could have been avoided. Mr. Ragavalu, I'm not sure who's going to take the first round of questions, or if Mr. Yawa is going to start. I know he was having some technical difficulties earlier. If you could just indicate to us who will be taking which questions for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you?
We can hear you, Mr. Advocate Yawa. You may go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start maybe on what could, to a large extent, be on principles, and then colleagues will really help with the specifics. Let me talk to the test space first, Chair. The method that was published, negotiated at NETLAC, where employers are represented by their constituency, workers were represented by their constituency, which is unions, and of course the department for everybody, if you like. And these were variously communicated in media and other mechanisms, have said that the applications must be done by the employers or bodies like bargaining councils. The idea being that some employer may have 500 workers. And if we just deal with one employer who knows all the details of their workers, it makes it easy to communicate. And then our response communication will be to the applicant, who's the employer. And that communication is very immediate. It's in our system. At the time we pay the person, we give what we call a payment breakdown. We say of the 500 you applied for, X number is successful, their list is in annexure this. X number is unsuccessful, their list is in annexure this, and the reasons why they are unsuccessful is there, and what you need to do as the employer to fix the situation. So that information is very immediate. Now, if then workers, as is the case here, as we see now, what we are dealing with is individual workers, not the employers. And information we don't have is whether how many workers work for that company, where this one or two, the 100 and something that you are counting, I suppose they are spread in various employers. We don't know them how many of the employees of that employer. But where there shall have been a problem, Chair, would be where employers, and I'm not raising this to blame and to make ourselves angelic, is that the employers who know the reasons why, and who have workers who shall have been paid and those who shall not have been paid, possibly they did not communicate as they were the agent for us to the individual employees. What would then result in us conducting employees directly when we got the information from the committee is where we then have the individual details of the employee's consent and we start to do the conducts. I agree with the point that a month between that time and now perhaps needs to be explained as to what happened. But Chair, without also excusing, I can indicate that when we got the pandemic, the UIF organogram and the number of staff were never geared for a pandemic. As you would know, how you get to say, for this type of work, you need 2 people, for that one, you need this. Same with Parliament. Systems shall have been put in place. For the provincial legislature, you need to have X number of members, and you also need to have X number of staff for each member or for each committee or for each whatever else. You dare get to a pandemic, you use the same resource to respond to something over and above what you would have responded to. And somewhere, of course, that volume does impact on the speed with which you can do things. I'm not saying in all situations it's excusable. We could not have done better than we did, but I just wanted that the context must be there. The other question that was raised, Chair, was, is there a system that gives a feedback as to whether the monies have been paid or not paid? Yes, there is. In the design of the TES system, we have what we call a memorandum of agreement between the UIF or the department and the individual applicants who are the employers in the majority of cases, where we say after X number of days, I think in the memorandum of agreement, we're saying within 3 days of receipt of the money, you must pay it to the worker's consent and give back a feedback to say, yes, this number is what you gave money for, all of them have been paid. The memorandum was so strong that if we must make another payment for another month, we shall not make that payment if we don't have proof that the prior payment has been dispensed according to the agreement. We experienced problems, Chairperson, where employers did not do that, and the Western Cape employers were no exception. We did have an interaction, and maybe the CDPO will speak better on this. A department within the Western Cape government, which is not Parliament, asked us these questions, and we raised with them that we are expecting these employers, which are your employers, which you are asking for, to communicate back that they have paid the money to the workers, and if there are challenges, let them raise them with us so that we attend to solution. To my knowledge, Chair, I was not always at the acting space, so I may have some gap here and there, but to my knowledge, we did not receive from those employers and through the department who was responsible over the economic activity, something that says it didn't go well. But the major problem on the point about a feedback system was that employers generally were not doing that. Now we were between a rock and a hard place. Do we then not release the next payments? Because one thing they were faithful in doing is to apply for the next tranche. Do we then hold back the next tranche because the employer didn't comply with the accountability for the first tranche? And in that process, we had a whole lot of noises and discomforts about people being put into problem. And I think that the decision that was taken was that, okay, we shall have the follow the money audit process so that we can verify ourselves. It became an unnecessary expense, but it was an expense occasioned by employers, not accounting. And we had to spend money on that to try and find out who paid and did they pay as they should have had. So we did have those problems, but yes, the system did communicate that you got the money, account within X number of days and give it back. The system also said, if you didn't pay the money within that time, the interest that you shall generate, because we know in some instances, interest is daily. The interest that you shall have generated is not yours, it's the UIF's money. So pay what the UIF told you to pay to the employee and return what you did not pay over, including its interest. And we noticed that's why we had to have the law enforcement agencies, that some people tried to have something that says, okay, if I received X number of millions from my employees, if I can delay for X number of period, maybe I can get a bit of interest and maybe it helps with other things. And that was an abuse of the system. But the follow the money did help in those regards. So, Chair, yes, I agree, but then the colleagues will go to the details. But I just thought that let's speak to the framework. We had an MOA. The appliers were the employers of bargaining council. They had a duty to tell us in no time. Currently, Chair, and to obviate a recurrence of that, we then changed that system. We said, okay, employers, some of them, not all of them, do not pay the money over to the workers immediately. And we get to all sorts of things. Some people end up troubling the portfolio committees, others trouble whoever else they can resort to. We then changed now and said we shall pay the money directly to the account of the employee so that we minimize this delay. And if people don't know, they quickly know. We also installed in our system a self-monitoring for each worker, whereby punching your ID number in the system, it tells you, was there any payment made for you and how much is it? So that they can also reconcile between what employers were giving them and what they should be expecting. Because we also realize problems like, Chair, some employers did not declare or insure their workers. Some would have 20 workers, they insure 5. Now, when the money comes, because now the situation is forcing everybody to be having a similar expectation of some relief. It's not like when one person loses a job, then it's a private thing between that person and the employer. Other employees don't have to know. Now we know there is no money from the employer. There is an intervention by government. Every worker expects. Now, some employers, because they didn't do what they should have done, they then take the small money that was given for the 5 and try to split over all the 20 workers because they are embarrassed and some are fearing backlash that other workers are going to rise up. Then they split this money wise. We gave 1,000 or 2,000. They gave 20 rand, 30 rand. I'm just using examples. The figures are not exact to everybody. And then workers now say, but I look at the ID, what I should have been paid is this much, but what I was paid is less than that. And you find that our call centers and our every other resource was absorbed in trying to solve those problems. And there were many of them into their millions and thousands, Chair. And those things, and I'm not using this as an excuse, it became a reality that our capacity, which was never designed for this onslaught, would then be slower than it should. I know there are other non-excusables. When you talk the ordinary benefits, were still happening within this context, but I know even outside that context, we're not as shiny as we wanted to, which then makes our explanation and excuse and justification believable for 1 minute and not believable for 1 minute because there's some similarity of delay. So we do accept that we didn't cut at the level we should have cut all the time. But in this situation, we also had this bigger than expected and where we had to pay. We've never in our history as a UIF in 1 year paid 61 billion. And we had to do that, and we do that within days with all that we did receive. So those are some of the context within which some of the mishaps occurred, Chair. But I could stop there, and colleagues then perhaps can then zoom to any other question that I didn't speak to in the framework and to the specific questions that were raised. Thank you, Chair. In the committee.
Thank you. Mr. Ragavalu.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wouldn't repeat what Advocate Yao was indicated, the acting commissioner, but I will try to head on in terms of the questions given by the members and by yourself, Chair. The first thing in terms of the task portal, when the task portal was designed at the initial stage and take into account the volume that we had to deal with, it was built or designed as a self-help portal. That means any person that can goes onto the portal will get information that indicate the status and progress or lack of progress of the application. For example, I indicated to you in terms of the error message, and the error message will indicate something to the employer. And if the employer accepts it, then the claim remains as is. If the employer doesn't accept it, there is a process in terms of correcting it. Now, as Advocate Yahweh indicated, that our main contact was with employers, and we directed our communication directly to employers mainly, but also to employees as well, in terms of our communication letters that went directly to those employers on the task portal, giving them information in terms of the processes and add-ons to the system. Now, if you look at the period is started 27 March and we're now in August. So it's about 18 months that the process is in place. And I think employers through their own HRM unit or through consultants are well versed in terms of the process if you look at the amount we paid and the numbers we paid. However, having said that, contracted to the Department of Employment and Labour, I think that the department was given the services of GTAC. I think the GTAC is attached to National Treasury, and GTAC is in terms of constantly involved with us in terms of assessing our process going forward and recommending changes to our process that will be beneficial both to employers out there, whether it's a look and feel, whether it's the language, whether it's the wording, whether it's the navigation. All those are being assessed by GTAC as a technically advisory body or committee, and those changes are being factored in. Currently, what we are working with GTAC is a case management system. Now, the Department of Employment and Labour has entered into a contract with a call center service provider, and I think it's about 2 to 3 months old in terms of a new call center service provider. And through them, we are working with enhancing the case management. They have the technical ability to do that. Is just for us to realize the full potential of their service provider. And I know tomorrow, which is Thursday, we're having a meeting with the social partners in terms of streamlining or ironing out the gaps in terms of the case management. And if the case management is put in place, then that will go towards removing many of the issues we have in terms of non-finalizing of any cases that are received. Now, in terms of the second part of it, in terms of the UI Act, now the UI Act procedure hasn't changed. Even during the lockdown, it hasn't changed. The only thing that changed during the lockdown is that we moved to a non-contact environment. That means instead of a person walking into the labor centers, getting the right information from the CSO and completing the right forms, etc., it was more a face-to-face contact. During COVID, we moved to a non-contact face-to-face. Maybe that's the reason for the completion of the incorrect forms. It could be, it's assumption. I'm not saying it is directly linked to it, but prior to lockdown, we always had the contact. If a person came in and gave a form into us, we quality checked it at the labor centers before we sending it to processing. If a person dropped in a payment documentation into one of the drop-down box, it is quality checked. In every labor center, we had the queue management system, but that was all face-to-face. Now we went to the new environment. Maybe these issues have been surfacing, and together with the various provincial offices, we have to see in terms of the non-face-to-face contact is how to improve communication to ensure that these documentations are not done incorrectly. In terms of any violation of labor laws, the process is the same, right? If an employee is having a problem with the employer, then they're free to open up a case in terms of Basic Conditions of Employment Act or any other Labor Act. And that case is dealt with at the front line. From the front line, it goes to specific inspectors, and the inspectors go out. So maybe during the time of the lockdown, and those contact engagement with employers were lacking. So maybe these cases was not dealt with. In terms of payment to employers directly to employees, once again, as Advocate Yawa has indicated, the process is in place. However, the process we have is documentation, proof the payment was handed over to employees. But we also went one step further in terms of testing that process. And testing that process is to follow the money together with law enforcement agency. However, it doesn't stop an individual who feel that they were given incorrect amounts or no amounts by the employer to lodge a case with any labor officers, and the matter will be dealt with as indicated through the risk management unit. And if found guilty, then potential fraudulent transaction or transgression of our law, then is handed to the law enforcement. In terms of, yes, the 6th of August, Chair, if we were delayed in the process, apologies for that, Chair, because we try to have a three-way process. One is to look at all the cases, two is to give feedback, and thereafter in terms of contacting the clients. And I know the contacting the clients, we requested the provincial office in Cape Town to do that for us. And if there was any delay from our side in terms of the information going to Cape Town office, apology from my side, Chair, and that we will correct going forward, and hopefully we wouldn't repeat the mistake going forward. In terms of the 98%, Chair, if I misled you, apologies again, because I mentioned that when I was at the UI Act claims, and most of the UI Act claims were finalized. So I mentioned that point during the first part of the presentation in terms of UI Act. I know most of the unresolved cases are with the task portion of it, and the task portion of it is to check whether monies were received by the employees to confirm that, and also in terms of getting contact details to confirm the clients. Yes, most of the unresolved cases lies with the task portion, and with the task portion, it's three things that we refer to: IS to confirm receipt of payment, two in terms of getting the right details from the client, and three is in terms of contacting the employer to tell the employer the portal is still open. If they experience a loss of income, then they can apply. Chair, if I omitted anything further, you can indicate to me and I will try to cover it. But I think Advocate Yawa has covered it adequately. But let me give an opportunity to the CDPO of Western Cape. Maybe he has 1 or 2 points to add on. CDPO?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and think as well as you, Mr. Rakavalo. And I think from the level of province, I think it's important also to share in some of the responses that have been given. The issue of delays, I think, has been raised very strongly by the honourable members, and I know Honourable Fund of Vestate has actually indicated the issues of delays, and this talked to the very issue of the non-compliance by employers, I think, in this regard. And I think this discussion is, it's important for us to highlight this issue so that members can understand the extent of the contribution when there is non-compliance to the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Mr. Regawala has indicated quite a lot around the issues of UI-19. UI-19 is an important document for us, which enables us to be efficient in processing the UI applications. And if that piece of document is not submitted by the employer, it really hampers us in terms of timeously processing the claims. And I think it's very important. And this actually is the main contributor in some of the delays, I think, that we're experiencing as a province. If an employer has not submitted, we are unable to process the claim. If the previous employer of the worker has not submitted, we still have got to chase that employer for us to be enabled that the claim is processed on time. And I think, and I'm hammering on this point because it's the biggest problem for us, I think, as a province, and it really one of the challenges which I think we are experiencing. There was a question which was a very important question also, which was asked by the Honourable Contra around the issue of labour relations in the workplace. If an employer is putting an employee under such stress, such that it's difficult for an employee to lodge the claim, and I think the process has been highlighted. That particular, if for example, an employer doesn't want to complete a UI-19, for example, and those are the key issues which we find. But in that instance, an employee is supposed to go to our offices and lodge a complaint, which will obviously send an inspector to that specific workplace for us to ensure that the employer complies. I know Mr. Rakabala has emphasized on that point, but I thought it's important because this is how we contribute as a department to ensure that there is sound labor relations in the workplace, because inspectors are visiting these workplaces. Of course, there are limitations that COVID has brought in our environment as a department, which in many instances we had inspectors visiting workplaces in large scales, but there are limitations now. So the whole issue of contact has really posed a bit of challenge for us, but under the circumstances, we are trying to ensure that inspectors are visiting. I have also in the meeting have the Provincial Chief Inspector, Mr. David Iso, who is very active also in this space of supporting the test processes. I thought he would chairperson through you to also allow him to share some the supporting role of inspectors to ensuring that we process the unemployment insurance claims quicker. And I think he has a role that I think he plays at the inspectorate, I think, in this regard. The chairperson has asked really why the delays, 3 weeks. We now contacting the clients, I think on the 6th of August or so. The failure on our part, perhaps we did not really indicate the number of cases or the instances where we have actually been contacting the clients. We thought we didn't want to cloud this report and update it on every instances which we've made a call or we've called the clients. But I think we thought let's just write one of which is the 6th in this instance, which was the last call which we have made, which actually led us to the breakthrough of being entertained by the client, I think, in this regard. So we did not really list all the instances where we were attempting to make these the calls to the clients in this regard. Let me through your chair again, and then without waste of time, perhaps to allow Mr. David Iso to also say something on the issue around the IS, the Inspection Enforcement Services. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, Honourable Chairperson and members. We have over the last 18 months have had so much work to do around TERS. Our contact numbers from the Department of Employment and Labour in the Western Cape is on the internet. So we are engaged through WhatsApp and through our cell phone numbers. And there are 3 critical roles that we play. Number 1 is to determine whether the client has had an application made by the employer. We then follow that process up so that there's an application. The second step would be for us to look at why there was no payment, and then work through the UIF if there are any outstanding documents and collect those documents. And the final process would be that in the event where payments has been made and those payments has not been transferred into the employee's bank accounts, we would then go through what we would call an enforcement process in terms of Section 32 of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and we would refer that particular matter through a compliance order to the CCMA for enforcement. So those are the 3 critical processes to follow in the event of an employee not getting a payment. The obstacle for us is when the employer is not registered with the UIF, we then have to go through an enforcement process to get the employer registered. And that to me is the biggest stumbling block, is that you can't pay TERS, neither can you pay UIF if the employer is not registered. And I've seen, if you have also seen through the reports that has been presented now, is the lack of the employers being registered with the UIF fund. And that to us is critical. And we have a specific unit called the Unemployment Insurance Fund Auditors Unit, where the auditors now go in and audit the records of the employer, and we impose a fine when an employer is not registered with the UIF. And through that process, we can then recover those monies. And that also goes through the CCMA, where we can do the enforcement. So it's quite a lot of work for us, Chairperson, but that's the process to follow And I believe that we have then added the last leg is when there's refusal to pay, we then refer the matter to the SIU. And so far we have, the last 2 weeks, we've sent nearly 20 cases to the SIU, and the value is somewhere in the region of 6 or 7 million. And that process, we cannot go any further because our process ends when we do the referral to the SIU, where they would then enforce it further through the criminal courts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else from the UIF who would like to add before I go back to the members?
Chair, I just got to indicate one thing. Yawa just has some urgent matters to attend to. He said he will come back within 5 minutes, Chair.
No problem. Thank you so much. Mr. Ragavalu, I just wanted to check in terms of the submissions we've sent to your office. There were 70, let me just see here quickly. There were 70 submissions regarding the TERS, and there was 53 non-TERS but UIF related matters. Could you just indicate out of all of the submissions, how many still need to be completed, including those where you still need to recontact the people, just so that we know how many of the submissions we need to check up on for next time?
Okay, I will quickly do that, Chair, and just give me 1 or 2 minutes while you're taking questions. I'll quickly double verify it on my PowerPoint presentation and give you an answer.
Thank you so much. In the meantime, while Mr. Ragavalu is just checking the non-completed matters, members, I'm opening up now for follow-up as well as new questions. Member Nkondlo, any other hands? If none, Member Nkondlo, you may go ahead in the meantime.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just want to check with the response, I think from the Cape Town office, that their biggest problem is non-compliance of employers. Would they be able to give us an indication whether using percentage of the extent of non-compliance and the delays from an impact point of view that were caused by such non-compliance? And the second one, Chair, is I think also one of the respondents indicated, I think it's Advocate Yawa, that you have a situation that was then revealed during this process that employers would have a registered few number than the total employees in their employ. So I just want to check again whether such a situation, is there a mechanism with the Department of Labor, in particular their enforcement office, or are we in any way having a situation here which says if an employer does not declare the full number of employees, the state through the Department of Labor may be sitting with what is the right term? A number that actually it does not represent the actual number of people that are employed. Is that what it means, given the fact that such was revealed now during this particular COVID? And I'm asking if there isn't a mechanism that helps the department or authorizes the department to have full information of declaration of people who are in the employ of these particular employees. My last one, Chair, is that I just want if the colleagues can indicate to me, is that what under your normal circumstances, both for the UIF and also for the TERS, what is their turnaround times? And if they can give us that, and also an indication on average of the billions that they had to disperse, how have they fared in as far as that turnaround time is concerned as the department? And and the extent, Advocate Yawa, that you are able to take these challenges back to the process of NEDLAC that you referred to, of the challenges of the employers, especially these challenges that you're saying in the absence of the employers enabling you with the information that you need, you then get to be delayed, and it means the employees now are unable to receive their what is due to them. You know, whether that particular feedback has taken place through a NEDLAC process at this point, or understanding that obviously now you can still have NEDLAC conversations through virtual platforms. But I'm interested in that as also a feedback loop, because when delays of the beneficiaries happens, people are not blaming the employers. The Department of Labor and the government is then, you know, placed on the spot in as far as any of those delays. So that's why I'm asking whether that system of NEDLAC, how robust is it, and more about process improvement than just the blame game, but process improvement, so that at least when you continue with the next applications, when you continue with the next disbursement, at least after that, there is much relief and much better processing, you know, after that such feedback. So I think those are my follow-ups, Chair, when one listens, I think, to the responses given by the colleagues.
Thank you so much. Member van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I would like to share some of my impressions dealing with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, and perhaps Mr. Ragavalu may be able to either confirm or say, no, this has been a once-off. Chair, you will know that during the previous time when the UIF was so kind to come and present to us, that I at that stage complained that I was just completely unable to get through on their call center. And we were told by the then acting commissioner that, yes, they were transferring it to a new call center agent. And I think Mr. Ragavalu also referred to that just now. Now, when I found this new service or this new call center early this morning, my impression was that they don't actually have access to the system online, because I had to laboriously spell out my name, and Andrikus van der Westen is not that easy for somebody that's not, you know, working with that kind of surname every day. I had to give my ID number, I had to give my cell phone number, and I had to give my email number in order to get a reference number. Now, all of that detail is on the UIF U-filing system. The ID number would have been sufficient. The cell phone number should have been sufficient. And then I obviously also have a UIF number, which interestingly enough, they never asked for. So perhaps Mr. Ragavalu, if you could just tell us, you know, is it so that the agent taking my call has not actually got access to my profile? Because I was hoping for some, can I call it online or telephonic assistance? At least, Chair, I can confirm that the call was taken in a relatively short time period, and at least I could speak to somebody. The next one, Chair, is that I find the website to be extremely slow in updating, in downloading, in logging in, etc. As I speak here, I'm sitting and waiting for, you know, and I've been looking at this even before I started speaking now. Please wait. We are calculating your declaration information. Is this slowness of the system today? Is it an everyday occurrence, or is it the kind of pain that, you know, everybody that visits the U-filing website must go through every time that they want to access the information? And then thirdly, Chair, I did ask Mr. Ragavalu or the other members, do you have a system whereby, if some cases run outside of your normal turnaround time, and I'm glad my colleague Honourable Nomin Kondlo also asked, what is your standard for turnaround time? Do you have a system whereby, red lights go on, whereby management is alerted to certain cases that just seem to have slipped through the cracks or seem to be particularly problematic ones? And then, Chair, lastly from my side, I would like the people on this online meeting to know, when I sent an email off via the Commissioner last time, I got a message back to say we've been trying unsuccessfully to contact you via phone. Now, Chair, my cell phone number is linked to one of these voice mailboxes. There were no messages left for me. Also, if my cell phone misses a phone call, it will normally indicate and say, you've missed 3 calls, which sometimes happen when you're on one call or you're not, fast enough to get to your phone. It's quick enough to get to your phone. There were none of that. So I'm just wondering, are you also recording outgoing phone calls? Because obviously when we phone the call center, they will say, please note that all phone calls are recorded. Do you have a record of such outgoing calls? Because we've now also learned of some cases where you say you've been unable to get hold of those customers. Is there a record whereby you can say, well, we've now tried 3 times or 4 times to get a hold of you. These were the times, and this is the number that we've phoned, and this is the call center operator that have tried to phone you. Thank you, Chair. And can I just say, I'm still looking here at Please Wait. We are calculating your declaration information, and I'm not a big employer. I don't have a lot of employees. I really can't think why the website must be this slow in my case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member van der Westhuizen, and it is quite concerning, the matters that you've raised. And I do think that it's not unreasonable for us to ask per resolution for records of the outgoing calls to the persons in terms of the feedback that needed to be given regarding the submissions. Mr. Ragavalu, I'm going to ask you now to go ahead and assign the questions accordingly. I know Advocate Yahweh has just stepped out for a few minutes to another urgent matter and will return soon. But if you could please assist us in the respective matters. Yes,
thank you, Chair. Apologies, first question, I did not get the entire full set because I was busy doing the totals that you asked me. But in terms of question 2 and question 3, I do have the full sets, but if you can repeat question 1, then I can cover it. But in terms of the information that you needed, out of the 70, I think 41, we have to come back to you on TERS. The 41 is that we have to try to contact the client again. We failed, we send SMSs, or it's referred to RES unit for further investigation where the client is confirmed they received no payment to date. So that has been referred. In terms of the UI Act part of it, my count came to 5, but as I said, I will double check it out after this meeting to see whether my tallies come to 41 and 5 in terms of further action needed by Department of Employment and Labour. In terms of the last part of the second question, in terms of turnaround times, yes, I will cover in terms of both actions. The non-TERS, that is a UI Act, and also in terms of the TERS portion of it. In terms of the UI Act, it is stated in our strat plan, it is stated in the APP, that in terms of turnaround is 15 days in terms of unemployment benefits, 10 days in terms of in-service that you're looking at your maternity, your illness, your parental, and 20 days in terms of deceased. Now that forms part of our performance information. It is on a month-to-month basis is go over to our M&E monitoring and evaluation in terms of evaluation the process. It is stated in terms of reports to various structures within and externally to the department. And further to that, it is subject to internal audit and AG, because performance information is one area that is audited by AG. In terms of us monitoring it and having a tracking part of it, currently it is done through a manual process. I would say a semi-automated process. I wouldn't say a fully 100% manual process. Now there's two reasons for that, why it's still at the semi-automated process. One, the department is moving over to SAP. So we're in the process of changing our system, and the June date that they gave us in terms of moving over, in terms of migrating to the SAP environment, is December this year. So therefore, we did not make wholesale changes to our system in terms of enhancing it, because at the end of the day, it will be loss of income because we're going over to the new SAP system. Now, in terms of the semi-automated process, we extract reports from the system on a bi-monthly basis in terms of application received per labor center, per provincial office. And we forward that to the provincial office, and from the provincial office, they monitor and send it to the labor centers. That indicates all applications received, and if it's finalized, what is the period, and also if it's unfinalized, also what is the period. And that's what we call the synchronization between our application process and our processing in terms of the claims processing unit. But as I said, it's a semi-automated. Once again, we're moving over to the new environment SAP. In terms of the test portion of it, we indicated to all employers that from time of receipt of your claim, it should be done within 10 working days. It doesn't mean it to be paid within 10 working days. It means be processed. And if it's processed and it meets all the qualifying factors, then in terms of payment, it will show. In terms of non-payment, it will show in terms of the error messages. In terms of a trigger system, yes, the task portal is fully automated. There is a trigger system. A trigger system, if there's any entry in the online portal or any back entry in terms of declarations, then the system is triggered in terms of reprocessing or recycling it. And therefore, I said the task is fully automated. In terms of the UI Act, yes, there is a trigger mechanism in terms of virtual office, that is the application process. If something is sent in that will indicate a trigger to the assessor will download it into the space, and then also in terms of processing it. However, we do require the human intervention in terms of the provincial office and labor centers managers or supervisory staff is to monitor it from the day-to-day process. However, due to lockdown period and the non-contact in terms of provincial and labor centers, I think that was lacking in certain periods of the last calendar year, not 100%, because the staff were either not at office or staff were, as I said, inverted commas, sick through COVID-19 virus. And once again, I say that even within our department, we was not prone to the virus. We had a large number of staff that contracted the virus, and we are depleted in terms of human resources. And I think in terms of fatal cases, I think we had a large number of fatal cases in Department of Labor nationally and also per regions. In terms of the slowness, etc., once again, it depends from period to period, from time to time, because as I said, we are dependent on CETA in terms of our network lines. We don't have a dedicated line. In terms of our network, it is linked to the CETA network based here in Centurion, and then from there it travels to the various parts of the country. And further to that, as I said, we're moving over to the new environment in terms of SAP, so we'll take care of also in terms of the online processes as well. And hopefully that will be a thing of the past when we move over to the new environment in terms of the network. But once again, from period to period, from time to time, we do get slower. Even in our system, when we work with it internally, we do find that it's been stored. And I think the same can be confirmed by the CDPO in Western Cape, that for certain periods and certain days and certain times, you don't have the system freezes over. In terms of the call center agents, you're quite right. They do not have access to your profile. It's something that the department is working on because of security. In terms of the call center agents, they are not fully Department of Labor officials, so we have to look at the security aspect part of it, which is trying to overcome. And once that is overcome, then access can be given to individual profile so they can have information at end. But as I said, the key point of it, if call center agents have access to individual details, we have to have the knowledge that individual details is not given to any third party because of security reasons. Your ID number, your password, etc., is all information that need to be secured in a certain way. But hopefully, those that are coordinating the call center agents and the call center process will be able to finalize that, and that process will run smoothly thereafter. And as I said in the beginning, GTEC is working with us closely in terms of realizing the full potential of the call center that we have for a 3-year period. And the call center is not only for unemployment insurance, the call center is for the Department of Labor. And I think currently there is 300 agents. In terms of outbound calls, yes, in terms of the telephone system, you can look at in terms of outbound calls. In terms of the call center, yes, 100%. In terms of local offices, I think they do have a telephone system that can get printouts that can view in terms of your outbound calls. The first part of it, as I said, I was busy counting, so I missed certain aspects of that question. From what I can gather, in terms of information to be given by the employer must declare his full set of employees. In terms of the law, there's only 2 exclusions. Any person that works for less than 24 hours is not deemed to be a contributor, and those elected officials are not deemed to be a contributor. All other employees are now deemed to be a contributor in terms of the Unemployment Insurance Amended Act of 2016, which means on a month-to-month basis before the 7th of each month, they must declare all employees. The biggest issue we found with CARES going forward is the large percentage of non-compliance. Non-compliance from employers in terms of declarations, non-compliance in terms of contributions. I think COVID-19 CARES has brought a point where employers are now realize the importance of unemployment insurance, because unemployment insurance is the only insurance that covered employees for loss of income. To date, we paid out 662 billion rands, and it's counting because there's no stop to COVID-19 regulations and directives. We paid out to close to 16 million entries, and I think about close to 6 million unique ID numbers. Yes, in terms of matching our database, I think in terms of government wide, our databases are not synchronized. We do not have a single database and say, yes, these are the employees in the country, and we rely on various databases to get information to validate and verify. There's movement between us and SARS. There's movement between us and OMAFERS. There's movement between us and DPSA. There's movement between us and SASA. There's movement between us and Department of Justice. I know SASA is using our database now because of the 350 rands in terms of payments to unemployed. And because of a lack of a unified database, then we have to go the elongated route in terms of confirmation, verification, and validation. Chair, I hope I covered everything. I will now pass over this to the CDPO of Western Cape. You can add on to anything that I've omitted, especially on question number 1. Over to you, CDPO.
Thank you, Mr. Ragavalo, Chairperson. I think the question which was asked, I think, directed to the province was the extent of non-compliance to the UI Act and the enforcement processes related to. I must indicate that in the province we have a set of specialized auditors who are specifically focusing on the unemployment insurance fund business, and those fall within the ambit of the Chief Inspector, Mr. David Iso, who will obviously respond directly to the question, because he is the person responsible for the extent of compliance and the percentage related to non-compliance in this regard. Mr. Iso, you can then take the floor through you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, CDPO. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think the one thing that COVID has done has actually shown us the high number of employers that are not registered with the UIF. Remember, if an employer is not registered with UI, then the worker does not qualify for the TERS payments. So We have now received from head office, who does the recording for us, roughly for the Western Cape, about 30,000 employers that were found to have breached one or other law within the UIF. And the honourable member earlier on made two disclosures. Number one was, if an employer has 20 people employed, he would only declare 10, and the other 10 would not be declared, or not declaring on time. And that would mean that by the time we would capture for payment, it would show a non-payment from their side. And this is the eye opener that we had, where we thought we had everything in control. It now shows us that we don't have it under control, that there are so many employers out there that are flouting our laws in terms of the UIF. And that has now induced us to focus on the issue of non-payment of UIF, and that has put the UIF fund under pressure. And so we are now taking a very hardcore approach on employers who does not declare, number one, and number two, who does not register with the fund. Because if the employee engages us, we can look on our system and see that this employee is not registered with the UI fund. And we then ask the question, why would the deduction show on your payslip, but it does not show on our system? And in our view, that's fraud. And we have taken that quite serious. And that's why you will see the volume of cases that we are now referring to risk, as well as to SIU, because we believe that's fraud. And that is the process that we are following as the inspectorate in the Western Cape. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ragavalu, is there anyone else from the UIF to still add before I go back to the members?
No, Chair, you can proceed. Yawa is not yet back, so we can continue, Chair. Over to you.
No problem. I just did a quick calculation. So out of the 70, 41 is still work in progress, obviously. So 41.43% of the submissions received are concluded. Out of the non-COVID ones, 5 still need to be completed. So 90.57% have been completed. And in total, out of the 123, under just 1 month, all feedback was obviously given on all now today, but there is a total of 60.98% completed in under 1 month. It is a little bit concerning, given that it was quite a few submissions compared to what I assume can be quite a lot that is submitted to the UIF and the Department Labour on a monthly basis. But I will make some recommendations from my personal side to the committee a little bit later on this matter. Committee members, there's still quite a bit of time if anyone has some follow-up or new questions. If none, going once, going twice. Okay.
Chair.
Member Nkondlo.
My question on the NEDLAC feedback process and if it's working to register, and if it has been done, especially on these issues with both the labor and also the, the employers. I'm just wanted to understand whether, since this process, has there been any engagements to give feedback, and what has been the response, especially of the employers and the union, I think, constituencies.
Thank you. I remember that being for Advocate Yawa specifically. Mr. Ragavalu, do you perhaps have information on that?
Yes, hopefully I can answer it fully. If not, then we can leave that for Mr. Advocate Yawa. In terms of the NEDLAC process, yes, we have representative from labor, from business, and also from community. Yes, there's interaction in terms of registration, declarations, contributions. There's information being shared. We have a subcommittee of this NEDLAC process, which we call the NEDLAC Operations Committee, where we look at operations issues. And operations issues, we look at compliance level, we look at contributions, declarations, and then in terms of information being passed over to respective organizations that deals with these employers in terms of ensuring that the proper compliance level is ensured. In addition to that, we get feedback in terms of the task processing, where there is delays, where there's hiccups, and where there's slow movement. There's also feedback in terms of the look and feel of the task portal. For example, you might get business saying, yes, members went onto the task portal, they were confused by the messages they see. And then together with the NEDLAC members, we try to recoin the messages. So various interaction takes place on various levels. So there's no boundaries in terms of what we can do and what we cannot do. As I said, we meet on a weekly basis in terms of NEDLAC. And in terms of the NEDLAC operations, which is linked to the NEDLAC process, we meet twice a month. And the NEDLAC ops, we deal with operations issues, and the subcommittee deals with the so-called eye level in terms of directions and general progress or lack of progress made. Currently, the focus is on the last directive, which is the 25th of that was signed on the 15th of July, that covers from the 16th March to 25 July, which is a sector base. You're looking at events. I know in Western Cape, in terms of events, part of it is also covered there. And you're looking at hospitality. Hospitality, you're looking at bed and breakfast, you're looking at tourism, and also in terms of liquor. There's one other aspect that we're moving to, just for information. I think you might have seen it. There's a regulation passed by Department of Employment and Labour, signed off by the Minister. We're looking at the unrest claims that took place in KZN and Gauteng, and I think that we will unroll in the next week or so, depending on what progress we made. But hopefully I'll cover your questions. If not, then Advocate Yao can add on, but I don't see him in attendance at the moment. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. And as members, we can also request some extra resolutions at the end of the meeting to deal with some of these matters as well. Thank you so much. Are there any new questions? There are no new questions. I would just like to thank the UIF for the comprehensive manner of which they've dealt with the queries that we've received from the members of the public. All legislatures in South Africa, I believe, can consider themselves parliaments of the people, and that is what we attempt to do when it comes to our committee work, is to ensure that the departments who are supposed to assist the people in our province are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So please don't think that when we ask these particular things of the respective department that we're trying to catch you out. We're simply trying to make sure that the people that are the most vulnerable on the ground are able to get the assistance that they deserve. And I would like to thank you for participating and engaging with us robustly on these respective matters. And I'm sure it won't be the last time that we have you in committee. I'm sure that we're going to have probably some further questions for you and some further reporting on some of these matters. But thank you so much. With that, we're going to now move on to committee administration, and I'm going to allow the department and the UIF to go about the normal day-to-day operations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. While everyone is, or all the officials are leaving the meeting, I'm going to now hand over to the members if there are any particular resolutions that members would like to put on this matter before we move on to matters such as minutes and other resolutions on this matter. And just before we go there, I just want to really thank Ms. Adams and Ms. Kluter for really all of the work they have put into this process. Long nights have gone into putting the submissions together, creating summaries, working on how to ensure that information is kept confidential, working with IT, and I see Mr. Assam is also here with us, working with IT closely in order to figure out operational matters on how to receive queries, working in terms of adverts, and it has really been quite a feat working with all of this respective information. And I, from the bottom of my heart, and I think I speak on behalf of the committee, we would like to thank you for the dedication that you have to the people of the Western Cape. Members, with that, I'm going to now allow for resolutions on the matter. I see Member van der Westhuizen's hand. Okay, you can go ahead, Solon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the first resolution that I would like to propose is that we acknowledge the levels of frustration experienced by both employers and employees with the delays and other administrative problems experienced with the TERS scheme. I think that is the first thing that I would like us to acknowledge. The second one is that we must also acknowledge that the public service finds it difficult in general to adjust quickly to new challenges such as the TERS scheme, and that, you know, special managerial skills and budgets and resources are needed to allow for such quick adaptations in the models of service delivery required. And then thirdly, Chair, I think we also need to acknowledge that the public service itself was also disrupted because of the pandemic, when, you know, many of the government offices were closed and were not declared as essential services, whereas I think future governments should prioritize and acknowledge that certain public services are actually essential and should continue despite odds and despite disruptions. And then fourthly, Chair, I think we need to also, as a resolution, I would like to propose that we acknowledge the fact that, you know, quite a number of people that made use of the portal set up by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, that quite a number of them have now been able to have their cases either resolved or at least been served with the correct feedback on why some of these uncertainties and claims have not been able to be addressed via the normal processes, whereby one would have thought that, you know, they would have been served with the necessary information, etc. That is the proposals or the resolutions that I propose from my side, Chair.
Thank you so much. Before I go on to new resolutions, could I just have an indication if everyone is happy with those 4 resolutions or if there's any edits? Member Nkondlo, do you have any to those first 4 before I go to new ones, just so that it's not too many for us to go through at once?
No, I'm okay, Chair. I support the resolutions.
No problem. Member Maseko?
Chair, I do support the resolutions.
No problem. Thank you so much. So those 4 are then considered as our first 4. Member Nkondlo, you may go ahead.
No, thank you, Chair. Let me also add, I think, the appreciation to the committee coordinator and her team, and also I think the committee under your leadership, Chairperson. I think this was one of the very important tasks that as a committee we did. I think to go out of the normal routine work in this COVID and try and intervene, you know, as part of our economic role as this committee to enable and unblock where there are challenges. I think this is one work that for me actually takes me to my resolution proposal, that I think, Chair, there's a lot that I'm sure the committee coordinator, together with her team and ourselves, we can learn from this, which we may be able to utilize in future, or even other members coming here into our future. So I would like to suggest, Chair, that if it's possible, that we request that our team actually prepares a report of the type of work that we had to do, that includes both the challenges that they experience, both in terms of their own internal process of processing this, but also their own feedback, about this work and what are the things that they've learned. Because I think that report developed under your leadership, as our committee report on this particular work, Chair, will be very much important from where I'm sitting. And hopefully it could be a report as we sort of look at this work that can help us in future endeavors of this nature, and perhaps also shared with Parliament. So I'm just requesting, Chair, as the resolution, that perhaps we do such a report of this particular work that we've done. The second one, Chair, is that I would think maybe we may consider, I know that our agenda or our schedule is full, perhaps until this year, maybe even if it's next year, we may need to consider somewhat visits to these labor centers. I understand that this is outside of our provincial competence, but I don't think there's something stopping us, because I think with what Member van der Westhuizen speaks of the acknowledgement of the pressure from both the employers and employees, part of the Department of Labour's responsibility is to mediate between these stakeholders. So perhaps, especially in those that we've picked up where there has been problems, and particularly, Chair, in your non-metro, perhaps we can pick one or two here in the metro, but in your non-metro, or what is termed rural areas, I think it's important that we may want to just go into these labor centers just to get an understanding, because it's always like this when you deal with people of the departments, that when there's a crisis, they then only at that time realize that they've got capacity challenges, the task is bigger than what they had. So I think I'm interested in that if we can consider. And the last one, maybe if we can write to the Cape Town Office of Labour to check if they had engaged our own provincial Minister Mainir, I think on the 30,000 non-compliance they mentioned, because I remember in the early engagements through the ad hoc committee, Minister Mainir did mention that they are engaging with employers, with industry, but also with the Department of Labour, just to engage them on some of the issues that are being picked up at this level. So I'm not sure whether the Western Cape office has shared with Minister Mainir, so that he can, in his conversation with industry, be able to place these challenges and gain sort of some kind of encouragement and support, maybe for those employers, like your Chamber of Commerce will always be willing to share that information with their members and promote compliance. So I'm just asking, perhaps we could write that question to the Cape Town office and get them to inquire if they did communicate. If they didn't, if indeed they can do that, so that at least from our province's point of view, that I think there is an improvement in that area. It's not imposing, but it's just sharing that there is this particular issue, and how can industry assist in actually improving the situation in our province, of this glaring and non-compliance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. In terms of the report, I 100% agree. We were going to have a draft report ready for the 25th, which is in 2 weeks' time. But given that there are still matters that the UIF need to report back on, I'm going to suggest that we do not then do the draft report of the UIF matters on the 25th. that we perhaps first ask the UIF to report back on the outstanding matters. It can be in written format for the 25th, and then give the procedural officer and the team more time in order to put such a report for us together, then perhaps for a meeting after that then. That would be my suggestion. In terms of visiting labour centres, I have no problem with visiting labour centres. I think it's important if we're going to understand the impact that the situation has had on the people on the Western Cape. Some feedback, I've also requested the Chief Whip and the Chair of Programming, same person, in order for this committee to become a priority 1 committee as part of my indication at the previous committee meeting. Currently, the program is not very stable at the moment because of the uncertainty regarding the IEC dates, and will likely only be considered within next year's programming matters. I think it's going to be a while before we receive answer whether or not our committee will be allowed to meet a bit more frequently, especially in order to deal with all the different oversights that we usually have. In terms of writing to the Cape Town office, engaging the province, I don't mind us having that particular resolution. It is a national mandate for the UIF and the Department of Labour to deal with those employers who are non-compliant directly and to open respective cases. But for example, it doesn't stop us from asking whether the provincial department can at least engage the different sectors to find out what the current relationship is with the UIF, and to encourage them at their respective engagements to ensure that their compliance is all in order. Members, would you be happy with those suggestions?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, yes, Chair.
No problem. Thank you so much. Member Maseko?
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I must also add to salute our support staff. Really, they went beyond their call of duty in compiling all this information. Now they are very much appreciated. One thing from my side, maybe that is my take, Chair, for in future, if we can have, even if it's next year, because your program is full, looking at the IT systems within our government departments, because some of the things is you see that is a flaws that are there within the IT systems, that we are on the 4th industrial revolutions, but some of the problems that they pick up, if they had a good working systems, some processes, they will be easier for the communities as we try to help or assist them. So if we can try to look at these systems that they used, when do they upgrade? Do they even upgrade, or what is it that needs to happen within our departments to make sure that they talk to the demands of the pressure that we do have, as we don't have the normality that is happening presently? It will be great to talk to the departments about their IT systems. Thank you, Chair. That's all from me.
Thank you so much. I'm happy with that. I think what we can also do is, if we're going to be tackling IT systems and upgrading thereof, then we can also, I think, now start tackling some of what I think is quite archaic systems in government in general. I know government departments and some processes in submitting documentation sometimes still require fax machines. Instead of dropping something off hard copy or online or something like that. And I find it quite fascinating that the fax system is still in progress in government departments, instead of, for example, online submissions and stuff like that. I mean, most of us are able to these days do online SARS filing, for example, online banking or app banking. So I do think we need to also then possibly combine that with also start tackling with some of the respective types of documentation required. Members, are you happy with Member Maseko's resolution?
Yes, Chair.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to just request that we also make 3 extra resolutions. So would it be okay if we request that the matters that are outstanding from the submissions made be reported to us in writing by the 25th of this month. That would mean it will be 2 weeks' time in order to deal with that approximately 40% that has not been resolved.
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay, so that one is in order. And then also, if we can please request a record of the outgoing phone calls to the list of persons that made submissions to us and that they indicated that they're struggling to get hold of, just so that we can have assurances that they have actually made those phone calls to people on the dates that they say they've made the phone calls to respective persons.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you. And then separate to a report on our process on these 123 submissions that I've made, I do feel that this is not the end of our journey with the UIF and the Department of Labour, because surely there are submissions that were made directly to the Department of Labour and UIF separate to our committee processes that unearthed some of this information. And with that, I would like the UIF to continue to submit monthly reports to us on submissions that they receive, so that instead of us going, for example, on a quarterly or biannual process of finding out whether the covetous matters have been resolved, that we then get written reports on a monthly basis on these matters, so that we can be assured that they're actually timeously dealing with the cases and references that they are getting from the public. And I would like this to occur until the lockdown regulations conclude, given that covetous funding is directly related to the lockdown regulations. Would member be happy with this?
I want to support that, Chair, especially now that they say with GTEC they are implementing some case load management systems, because that will help us to see if indeed there is any improvement or so. So I fully support that.
Okay, I think what we can include is, because members ask questions on the GTAC, the new systems coming online, IT and upgrading the websites. They've indicated feedback they give to NETLAC on a frequent basis. So I think what we can actually do is we can also ask for those respective matters to also then be addressed in monthly reports on the cases they received and how many are closed and reasons why, for example, some have not been closed yet. And we can always give them our template of how to black out information, so that one, they give us the raw information the same way our committee populated it for members in the confidential documents, but also then that they use the template of blacking out the information then, so that should it go online for showing what the documentation is that the committee deals with, that at least that we don't compromise people's information. Would members be happy with that?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. And then finally, one of the challenges we experienced as a committee, previously we asked that we also have paid social media regarding the public participation, but the feedback we received on this front was that there's no WCBP policy for paid social media when it comes to things like public participation. And it's very concerning to myself, and I would like us to make a recommendation. I'm not sure to who the recommendation must go, if it must go to the chair of chairs or if it goes to the speaker's office. So the procedural officer needs to help me here with this one, please. But I would like us to make a recommendation that there needs to be some sort of policy or line in a policy somewhere that allows the committee to utilize paid social media for matters within the committee's mandate, such as public participation, legislation, and so on. We've already made an enormous feat in WCBP this term using WhatsApp, and we've seen WhatsApp being used for this public participation on the UIF. And I do think we need to now make another leap, which is actually not a big leap in 2021, but a big leap, I think, in terms of parliaments to be able to use paid social media for public participation. Would members be happy with that recommendation?
Chair?
Yes, Member van der Westhuizen.
I fully support that, but can I ask that we not only refer to social media, but also to online platforms? I've experienced in another committee as well that the budgets do not allow for us to even advertise, as you've said, legislation, etc., on some of the online media that's available nowadays. So social media fully support, but also online media. Thank you.
No problem. I'm very happy with that. I just find it. I think the weird word in my mind is weird. I don't have a more formal word for that, but I cannot fathom how in 2021 we are not able to use paid online media and social media and online platforms for participation. Members, would you be happy with those proposals?
Yeah, Chair.
Thank you so much. Okay, those are all from my side. Are there any other resolutions from members? If none, members on this particular front, I would like to thank you for your participation in this public participation so far. It's been a long walk to get here, and it's not going to stop here. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I always love the robust nature of the members in the committee. With that, we're going to then move on to the minutes. We have one set of minutes, I think, that we need to consider. Ms. Adams?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's the 9th of June. Lizette's going to flight.
Okay, thank you so much. Perfect. Let's go down on page 1 then. Okay, members can just check their attendance. Okay, that's page 1. If no edits, can we go to page 2? Page 2, just there by Ms. Naidu's name under Westgrade must be extra E in the word secretariat. At the last line, secretariat has an extra E. Thank you. Let's go down. If no edits on page 2, then we can go down. Okay, we can go down. Yeah, we can go down. We've already, I think, received majority, if not all of those resolutions. If there are no edits, then we can go down. Thank you so much. Members, those are the minutes of, is it the 9th of June? 9th of June. If I could get a mover for the minutes, please, if there are no edits. With the edits, sorry.
I move that
support
we
that.
adopt with the edits, Chair.
Thank you so much. I heard Member Maseko and Member van der Westhuizen, and the minutes are thus so adopted. Do we have any other documents we need to adopt today? Ms. Adams?
No, Chair, that's all for now.
Thank you so much. Members, with that, we are an hour early for the conclusion of the meeting. Are there any other pressing matters that need to be dealt with right now in resolutions and actions? If none,
No,
members, no problem. If none, thank you so much, members, for being with us today. The meeting is thus adjourned. Please stay safe and stay warm. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.